It is Whitebeard. The Navy camp was instantly in an uproar. Whitebeard's expression was indifferent, and he spat out a sentence lightly. What a guy who doesn't remember. But before he could make a move, white steam rose around Luffy, and his figure shot out suddenly, kicking the golden hook fiercely. A harsh clashing sound rang out, and this sneak attack was forcibly interrupted, and the two stood in a standoff on the spot. The Shichibukai are finally all here. I was wondering why only 5 showed up. Turns out the other 2 went to jail. But Crocodile is still fierce. He wants to fight the 4 emperors as soon as he gets up there. Indeed, but this environment limits his performance. If it were in the desert, he would have a few more chances. However, that sand spirit can really be stopped from turning into an element with water. But how does Luffy know this weakness so clearly? Has he fought Crocodile before? It should be, otherwise, with Crocodile's arrogant personality, he wouldn't talk to Luffy so calmly. How did he do it? Luffy is only level 79. Crocodile is level 97. Even if you gave him 3 more lives, he wouldn't be able to win. Crocodile noticed the water droplets constantly dripping by Luffy's feet, his brows furrowed. Have you prepared to fight me beforehand? Once we arrived here, our agreement was fulfilled. Why are you protecting Whitebeard? Luffy said angrily. Is he Whitebeard? Then you are not allowed to attack him. Ace likes this old man very much. Marco laughed and said, Ace's little brother, huh, not bad skills. Whitebeard kept watching Luffy's straw hat, recalling the scene of drinking with Shanks. At that time, he asked Shanks condescendingly, a man like you, to actually lose an arm in the East Blue. Everyone is shocked when they hear it. To what kind of enemy did you give your left hand? Shanks touched his severed arm and said, I bet it on the new era. It looks like Shanks lost his arm because of Luffy. Do you value him that much? No, what kind of background is this? On the Navy side, he has his own grandfather. On the pirate side, the 4 emperors call him the new era. And there's more. His father is the leader of the Revolutionary Army. Absurd. I feel like just this background is enough to become the Pirate King. Spirit Hall, Elder Hall. Lion Duluo looked at the sky canopy, subconsciously swallowing his saliva, his tone full of astonishment. Shanks, as a divine rank powerhouse, actually lost an arm in the East Blue. Isn't it said that the East Blue is the weakest sea? The elders in the hall heard this, and their expressions all became grave. Everyone in their hearts knew clearly that being able to severely injure a 4 emperors who was comparable to a god in the mortal world was definitely not something an ordinary powerhouse could do. I'm afraid there is only one answer, an elder said in a low voice, his tone carrying dread. The person who made the move must be a true god. Qian Daliu sighed softly, his gaze distant. Now it seems that the foundation and danger of the pirate continent are far more unfathomable than we estimated. The East Blue looks ordinary, but it actually hides shocking secrets, which is why a dignified 4 emperors would leave his territory only to return in defeat. It's just that I don't know if it's a true god or a divine beast. Gold Crocodile Duluo couldn't suppress his curiosity and asked aloud. Light Feather Duluo pondered for a moment and slowly stated his judgment. It should be a divine beast. Not a single god spirit has appeared in the pirate continent, but a few divine beast spirits have appeared. I don't think so. Demon Subduing Duluo shook his head, offering a different view. It should be a god, otherwise why would he let Shanks go? Divine beasts are not the same race as humans. For a time, there was a lot of discussion in the hall, and the elders held their own opinions. Chapter 77, Background King, Luffy. The flashback ended, and Whitebeard's gaze was deep. Kid, your hat looks very similar to the one Shanks had before. Closing square bracket. Luffy immediately turned his head, his eyes sparkling. Old man, do you know Shanks? This was entrusted to me by Shanks for safekeeping. Closing square bracket. Whitebeard didn't respond, shifting the topic, his tone suddenly turning stern. Are you here to save your brother? Closing square bracket. That's right. Luffy's tone was firm. Closing square bracket. Then you know who the enemy is, right? Whitebeard gripped his massive blade with both hands and slammed it heavily onto the deck. A massive aura wave erupted, shaking the figures around him. Like this, you'll lose your life. Closing square bracket. His words carried anger and warning, and his overwhelming aura swept across the entire scene, instantly drawing the attention of all the top powerhouses. Closing square bracket. Everyone had expected Luffy to be intimidated by Whitebeard's aura, but to their surprise, not only did he not back down, he shouted angrily, you're long-winded. You don't get to decide that. Closing square bracket. Buggy and Ivankov watched with their hearts in their throats, subconsciously holding their breath. Closing square bracket. Luffy didn't care at all about the heavy atmosphere around him, raising his head and shouting, I know it, you want to be the Pirate King, right? The one who will become the Pirate King is me. Closing square bracket. This sentence pierced through the smoke and clearly spread across the entire bay. The Navy and pirates were all in an uproar, their faces filled with disbelief. Someone was actually provoking Whitebeard like that. Closing square bracket. Whitebeard's expression darkened, and his blade was already raised, but looking at Luffy, who showed no hint of fear before him, he burst into laughter. Closing square bracket. You're certainly arrogant. If you dare to hold us back, I won't forgive you, snot-nosed brat. Closing square bracket. I'll do things my way, Ace will be saved by me. Luffy clenched his fists, his eyes extremely stubborn. Closing square bracket. Then he said solemnly, the Navy is going to execute Ace ahead of schedule. We have to hurry and save him. Closing square bracket. Hearing this, Whitebeard mused, is that so? Then thank you, kid. Closing square bracket. No problem. Luffy waved his hand, then leapt off the ship. Closing square bracket. Is he having an argument with Whitebeard? No, how does he dare? What level is Whitebeard, and what level is he? I don't understand, but I'm greatly shocked. I can only say that Whitebeard is broad-minded. If it were me, I would have slashed him with one blade. Broad-minded my foot, it's clearly because Whitebeard saw Luffy's background. Why do I feel like this Luffy isn't very smart? I have that feeling too. The sky canopy continued to play. Luffy gave a loud shout, leading the crowd behind him to charge directly toward the execution platform while the momentum was high, and the wave of the charge across the entire battlefield rose once again. Closing square bracket. But just as the pirates' morale was high and they were advancing at full speed, several brilliant lasers suddenly tore through the sky. Roars exploded one after another, and the pirates charging in the front were instantly blown about, their formation collapsing on the spot. Closing square bracket. Everyone looked up in a panic, only to see Kizaru appear slowly, his face wearing his usual nonchalant and somewhat playful expression, speaking slowly, "Oh my, that's really scary." Closing square bracket. Luffy recognized him at a glance, his eyes widening, and he shouted angrily, "It's you. The guy from the Sabayati archipelago back then." Closing square bracket. Kizaru's gaze fell on Luffy, his smile fading slightly, his tone revealing a bit of seriousness. "If I don't take you down, there will be quite a lot of trouble in the future." Closing square bracket. Before he finished speaking, he slowly raised his right leg, and blinding golden light instantly gathered around his leg. The intense light made it difficult for those around him to open their eyes, and a deadly, dangerous aura came rushing toward them. Closing square bracket. Yet Luffy, completely ignoring the murderous intent coming his way, continued to charge forward head-on. Closing square bracket. Everyone present had their hearts hanging in their throats, all concluding that under this blow, Luffy would definitely not escape unscathed. Closing square bracket. Just as the laser light surged and the murderous intent reached its peak, a figure suddenly intervened. Closing square bracket. Ivankov's eyes widened, and he blinked his eyes forcefully, shouting loudly, "Death wink." Closing square bracket. An invisible shockwave whistled out, not striking Kizaru directly, but instead hitting Luffy precisely, using this massive force to blast him backward, barely avoiding the fatal blow. Closing square bracket. Almost at the same moment, Kizaru's long-charged laser fired out, landing on the spot where Luffy had just been standing. The violent explosion kicked up dust that filled the sky, completely engulfing that area. Closing square bracket. That was close. Luffy almost lost his life. It really was dangerous. The Straw Hat is still too weak to face an admiral right now. But what's up with Luffy? Charging forward on his own. If it weren't for Ivankov, he would definitely be dead. But, is it my imagination? Why did Kizaru charge up for so long? Weren't the previous attacks instantaneous? It must be my imagination. He's a Navy admiral. How could he intentionally let a pirate go? It couldn't be Luffy's background at work again, could it? That can't be. Why would an admiral care about a vice admiral? Actually, it was at work. Isn't that Ivankov from the Revolutionary Army? Luffy is the son of his leader. It must be because of this that he stepped in to save Luffy. Ivankov was talking in a low voice with Luffy, when the surroundings suddenly brightened, and blinding light spread out once again. Closing square bracket. His heart tightened, and he hurriedly turned his head back, thinking it was Kizaru making another move, but what he saw was the figure of the tyrant Kuma. Closing square bracket. At this moment, Kuma did not unleash his terrifying ability, but instead opened his large mouth, with intense light originating from the same source as Kizaru's gathering in his mouth, charging up an attack. Closing square bracket. Luffy recognized the opponent at a glance and called out a warning. "It's that guy who sent us flying to different places, the guy who looks like Kuma." Closing square bracket. Before he finished speaking, 3 beams of light whistled out one after another. Ivankov was in midair, his figure rotating and changing direction in a strange posture, narrowly dodging all the attacks. Closing square bracket. The 3 beams of light smashed into the ground, blasting out 3 deep craters. The range of destruction was slightly less than Kizaru's lasers, but the power was still not to be underestimated. Closing square bracket. After landing, Ivankov's face was livid, glaring at Kuma who continued to launch attacks. Closing square bracket. As one of the Shichibukai, I can understand having different stances, but why are you trying to kill an old friend? Closing square bracket. Seeing this, Luffy was about to explain, but Ivankov raised his hand to interrupt. "Leave him to me, you hurry up and charge forward." Closing square bracket. Luffy didn't say anything more, nodded heavily, turned around, and ran at full speed toward the execution platform. Closing square bracket. Why, the one that just appeared is clearly Kuma. Why does Luffy say he isn't Kuma? Not only that, isn't the laser Kizaru's skill? Why can this Kuma use it too? Could it be that the pirate continent has also mastered something similar to ninjutsu? Can they learn other people's skills? Too much information. Kuma is actually a life and death friend of that Revolutionary Army member Ivankov. I think there's a big secret in this. Could this Kuma be an undercover agent? How is the pirate continent one secret after another? Can't it be as simple as the Naruto continent? Chapter 78. The spirit is a shadow, how can it turn people into zombies? Heavendo Empire, Heavendo City. Marshal Zheilong frowned, his expression solemn as he spoke. "Your Majesty, the situation is a bit strange." Emperor Shuiyi slowly shifted his gaze away from the sky canopy, his face showing confusion. "Oh. What has the marshal discovered?" "The Navy clearly issued the order to execute Ace immediately, yet the execution has been delayed." "This is too abnormal," Zheilong said in a deep voice. "Since they decided to advance the execution, they should have acted swiftly and decisively, not dragged it out like this." Emperor Shuiyi pondered for a moment and guessed. Could it be that the military order spread publicly, the information leaked, and the Navy temporarily abandoned the idea? Zheilong shook his head immediately. Reversing military orders is a major taboo in warfare. As a tactical general, Sengoku would not make such a low-level mistake. Beside him, Qian Runshui's eyes flashed as she stepped forward and said, "In my opinion, this news about the early execution was released by the Navy on purpose." Emperor Shuiyi's spirits lifted. "Crown Prince, tell us your insights." "They want to disrupt the pirates' state of mind. The more anxious the enemy is, the easier it is for their actions to reveal flaws." "Makes sense. The Crown Prince is meticulous." Emperor Shuiyi nodded repeatedly, then looked at Zheilong, who was still deep in thought. "Does my loyal subject have any other views?" Zheilong regained his focus, his tone becoming deeper, and Qian Runshui listened intently. "I agree with the Crown Prince's judgment, but Sengoku's calculations may go far beyond this layer," Zheilong analyzed slowly. "This order may not be fake news. If Whitebeard believes it, and the entire pirate army becomes anxious and rash, they will fall into a trap." But if Whitebeard sees through the scheme and determines it is just a bluff, thereby slowing down his pace and conserving strength, Sengoku will turn the fake into reality, truly execute the prisoner early, and catch the opponent off guard. After the words fell, the great hall was silent. Emperor Shuiyi gasped, his face full of amazement. What deep scheming. Truly worthy of being recognized as a tactical general. Killing two birds with one stone, occupying the upper hand whether advancing or retreating. Such strategy is top tier even across the entire Duluo continent, Qian Runshui praised sincerely. Zhe Long nodded in agreement. Emperor Shuiyi was in high spirits, smiling and praising. The marshal also has eyes like torches, seeing through the entire layout in an instant. Your strategy is not inferior to Sengoku's at all. Zhe Long waved his hand humbly. Your Majesty, you overpraise me. If it weren't for you and the Crown Prince pointing it out first, I wouldn't have been able to figure out the connections. If it were a real battle between the two armies, I'm afraid I would have suffered a loss before realizing this scheme. Emperor Shuiyi did not want to dampen his own morale and smiled. Being able to see through it is already a skill, the marshal need not be overly modest. Zhe Long sighed softly, stopped declining, and silently looked at the chaotic battlefield on the sky canopy. The sky canopy continued to play. Luffy charged straight ahead, deep into the Navy's hinterland. The soldiers stationed here were far stronger than the cannon fodder on the periphery. They could no longer be easily defeated by a single punch from him. Every confrontation required focused effort, and many attacks even landed squarely on him. But Luffy relied on the characteristics of his rubber body to endure the damage, and his pace never stopped. The situation suddenly changed again. Mariah leapt into the arena. His eyes were excited, and he stared fixedly at Luffy, laughing grimly. Straw Hat. I will take your shadow, and then use Little Oars Jr.'s body to let him return to the battlefield. As he spoke, Moria's hands did not stop, cutting off the shadows of the pirates on the battlefield one after another, stuffing them all into the bodies of the fallen Navy soldiers. The originally lifeless corpses suddenly stood up, their eyes hollow and dead, turning into zombies that obeyed orders. In just a short moment, 7 or 8 zombies crawled out of the ruins, surrounding Luffy. Take him down for me, Moria ordered sharply. Luffy dodged flexibly and counterattacked, but the zombies continued to act as usual after being hit, completely unaffected by the heavy damage. The surrounding zombies continued to increase. Relying on the corpses all over the battlefield, Moria's troops were endless. He looked at Luffy's shocked expression and became even more proud. See that? This is the battlefield. As many corpses as there are, I can create that many zombies. Isn't Mariah's spirit a shadow? How can he make zombies? Yeah, how terrifying, actually using corpses to fight. And the shadows aren't even his own, they are other people's. What an evil spirit. Did you notice? Those zombies aren't afraid of injury. It's not just that, those zombies even have combat techniques. Exactly the same as those pirates who lost their shadows. Isn't this invincible? On the battlefield, there are simply endless soldiers. Moria even wants to use Luffy's shadow and stuff it into Little Oars Jr.'s corpse. I can't imagine how to deal with such a huge zombie. Listening to Moria's tone, it seems like he was defeated by Luffy before. How is that possible? No matter how bad Moria is, he is still over level 90. By the way, what happens if you lose your shadow? The sky canopy didn't show it, but it must be very harmful. That is a shadow, after all. The sky canopy continued to play. Navy officers also poured in one after another. Luffy was caught in a double siege of zombies and regular Navy, facing danger at every turn, walking every step with extreme difficulty. Ace on the execution platform watched anxiously, unable to help but shout loudly, Luffy, don't come any further. The eyes of the powerhouses in the audience instantly focused on the two. Luffy had just repelled a Navy officer and turned his head upon hearing the sound, looking confused. Ace gritted his teeth and continued with a stiff tone, you and I are both pirates, we should be sailing freely on the sea. I have my own adventures, my own companions, you have no need to interfere in my affairs. Seeing that Luffy was still determined to move forward, Ace's emotions became increasingly agitated, and his words became sharp and harsh. You coward, coming to save me, don't you feel ashamed? I absolutely won't accept it. Go back immediately. Luffy, why must you break in? His words were all driving him away, but his heart was already filled with torment, secretly lamenting, please go quickly, Luffy. It was my own stubbornness, I don't want to drag you down anymore. Luffy's pace did not stop, instead, he suddenly accelerated, breaking through the obstacles. He gathered all his strength and shouted loudly, his voice piercing through the sky full of war, resounding throughout the entire bay, I am your brother. This sentence instantly evoked Ace's sealed memories. The screen flashed, and scenes from the past emerged. Young Ace picked up a wine bowl, looked at the naive Luffy beside him, and said seriously, you must remember, after drinking this bowl of sworn wine, we are brothers. Cheers. Luffy grinned and raised his glass readily. What a touching brotherly love. Even though there is no blood relationship, they can do this. Luffy as the younger brother wants to save his older brother, and Ace as the older brother doesn't want his younger brother to take risks, wanting to scold him back. They both have each other in their hearts. This kind of brotherly love reminds me of another famous brother relationship on our continent. I know who you are talking about. Star Luo, right? Since you know, why did you say it out loud? I will never call Luffy stupid again. He is a good brother. Everyone, please stop waiting for now. I will update again at noon. I need to organize my thoughts. Most readers want the Marineford War to end quickly, but there are still those who want to see Ace. It is hard to balance. P.S. In the Pirate King anime, the Marineford War has already started to show signs of being dragged out. It truly lives up to being the, Pirate King. Additionally, I am collecting everyone's opinions. For the next pirate dungeon, should I choose an individual or a faction? Mainly because I feel that if I choose an individual, they won't be able to make a splash in the Marineford War at all. Also, are there any recommended opportunities for the Marineford War, besides the Trem fruit? Everyone, feel free to share any opinions you have regarding the Marineford War. Chapter 79, Ace accepts his fate. The Straw Hat is actually Ace's younger brother. Quote closing square bracket. How is that possible? Ace's parents died long ago, where would he get a biological younger brother? Quote closing square bracket. The Marine soldiers discussed it amongst themselves, their faces full of shock and suspicion. Luffy ignored the surrounding clamor completely, his feet not stopping, charging forward all the way, shouting loudly, I don't care about any pirate rules at all. Quote closing square bracket. Ace on the execution platform was both anxious and helpless, shouting sternly, why can't you just understand? Quote closing square bracket. On the other side, Mariah kept harvesting shadows and controlling corpses, with large numbers of zombies forming one after another, about to surround them. Suddenly, a torrent surged up from the sea, splashing heavily onto Mariah and the group of zombies. Closing square bracket. The zombie bodies instantly went limp and collapsed, and the stolen shadows floated out from the corpses one after another, returning to the world. Closing square bracket. Mariah's expression darkened instantly, and he shouted angrily, who is it? Quote closing square bracket. Jinbei appeared, stepping on the seawater, his tone indifferent, Mariah, surely you haven't forgotten that your zombies fear salt. He turned to look at Luffy, leave the obstruction here to me, you just keep moving forward. Quote closing square bracket. The situation on the battlefield changed again, and the pirates' morale soared due to Luffy's persistence. Seeing this, Sengoku on the execution platform was burning with rage, immediately picking up the Den Mushi, his voice spreading across the entire bay. What are you all standing there for? Are you just going to watch a newcomer disrupt the entire situation? Quote closing square bracket. Inform everyone, this Monkey D. Luffy is not only Ace's sworn brother, but also the biological son of the revolutionary dragon. Quote closing square bracket. As the words fell, the whole scene was in an uproar. Whether marine or pirate, all showed shock. The name of the world's worst criminal, dragon, resounded throughout the four seas, and his bloodline appearing on the battlefield instantly stirred up huge waves. Closing square bracket. Facing the sky-filling astonishment, Luffy turned a deaf ear. He took a deep breath to mobilize his power, his bones expanded, his body surged in size, unleashing Gear 3rd, and with one punch, he slammed a giant vice admiral to the ground. Closing square bracket. He looked up at Ace on the high platform, his voice incomparably firm. Ace, no matter what happens, I will definitely rescue you. Quote closing square bracket. Mariah's spirit is actually countered by salt. Quote. Why is that? I originally thought it was because of the seawater. Quote. Seawater can be used to make salt, that makes sense. Quote. However, aren't all spirits in the pirate continent countered by sea stone? Why hasn't anyone used it until now? Quote. Didn't you see, that man covered in smoke, his weapon seems to be made of sea stone. Quote. That's right, against those who have eaten a martial soul fruit, it's truly a sharp weapon. One strike, and they're instantly powerless. Quote. It seems we still underestimated Dragon's identity. The Marines looked incredibly grave after hearing that, even more serious than when they learned of Ace's identity before. Quote. Nonsense, no matter how glorious the Pirate King was, he's dead, but Dragon is still plotting to overthrow the world government. Quote. The Pirate King, no matter how rampant, didn't rebel. Quote. By the way, is that Luffy's Gear 3rd? Making his body bigger by blowing air into it. That's really unreasonable. Quote. Within the sky canopy, the battlefield scene was fully reflected in everyone's eyes. Closing square bracket. Countless people were fighting to the death to rescue him, even risking their own lives. Luffy relied on his rubber body to withstand many attacks, yet he was repeatedly cut by sharp blades, adding many wounds to his body. Closing square bracket. Ace lowered his head, his voice carrying uncontrollable choking. Don't do this anymore. Why would everyone go to such lengths for someone like me? Quote closing square bracket. His eyes were red, murmuring softly, a bunch of fools, Pops, and Luffy. Quote closing square bracket. Garp watched the grandson pressing forward below, and the other grandson choking up above, his heart surging, filled with sorrow. Closing square bracket. A moment later, Ace's chaotic emotions gradually calmed down. The grace of Whitebeard's upbringing and the bits and pieces of growing up with Luffy flashed through his mind one by one, and he finally shed his panic and struggle. Closing square bracket. I won't panic anymore. He raised his head, his expression calm. No matter what awaits me in the future, I will accept it calmly. The helping hands extended, the blades falling, I will accept them all. Quote closing square bracket. As his voice fell, he bowed deeply to everyone. I've implicated everyone, I'm truly sorry. Quote closing square bracket. Garp and Sengoku beside him had experienced half a lifetime of storms and saw through it at a glance. At this moment, Ace had let go of his obsession and was facing his fate calmly. The atmosphere on the execution platform also became calm accordingly. Closing square bracket. Heavendo Empire, Heavendo City. Emperor Shuiyi looked at the sky canopy, sighing softly. It seems Ace has completely accepted his fate. Quote. His expression was peaceful, and he held little hostility towards Ace. He was merely the descendant of the Pirate King. The other side's disputes had never reached Heavendo, so he could clearly see the struggle Ace had gone through all along. But it was different for Luffy. This was the pure bloodline of a rebel leader. Qian Runshui resonated deeply, speaking slowly. The first half of his life was always trapped by the shackles of being Theosin of the Pirate King, and he once felt that his very birth was a sin. Quote. Plus, Garp wanted him to walk the path of a marine, and he had been struggling desperately to break free from his destiny for a long time. Only now does he understand that even if fate cannot be chosen, there are still fathers and brothers by his side willing to accompany him with their lives. Quote. These words also touched upon her own worries. how similar their situations were, both wanting to break free from their destined fate and prove the value that belonged solely to themselves. Marshal Long, however, had a cold and hard attitude, stating bluntly, in the end, he is just a pirate, not worth sympathizing with. Bearing the Pirate King's bloodline and still insisting on walking the path of a pirate is simply courting death. If he had sought out an isolated island to live in seclusion earlier, how would he have ended up in this state today? Quote. Watching the strict military discipline and combat style of the Marines in the Sky Canopy, Long had long since developed an intention to emulate them, secretly making up his mind to start reorganizing the Heaven Do army, and his view of pirates became extremely unpleasant. Qian Runshui glanced at him sideways, did not speak to refute, but silently noted this rhetoric in her heart, making a mental note of it. The flames of war on the battlefield had not ceased, and the Whitebeard pirates were attacking the marine warships with all their might. On the other side, Jinbei struck with heavy fists, forcibly forcing out all the shadows that Mariah had snatched. But Luffy encountered a new obstacle, blocked firmly on his path forward by Smoker. Closing square bracket. Smoker held his sea stone weapon, firmly restraining Luffy, murderous intent chilling, about to deal a lethal blow. At the critical moment, a snow-white long leg suddenly broke through the air, kicking him flying straight away. Closing square bracket. Let go of Luffy immediately. Quote closing square bracket. Smoker steadied his figure, his face darkening as he asked sternly, Pirate Empress. Are you trying to violate the agreement of the Shichibukai? Quote closing square bracket. Hancock's willow eyebrows stood up, her aura cold, daring to pin the person I adore to the ground. I have never been this angry, I will definitely crush your bones and scatter your ashes, and throw you to feed the beasts. Quote closing square bracket. Without waiting for Smoker to reply, she turned her head to look at the trapped Luffy. Closing square bracket. All the Marines present thought she was going to take the opportunity to attack, but who knew she raised her hand and took out a key from her bosom, which was the key to unlocking Ace's sea stone chains. Closing square bracket. Seeing this, Luffy was overjoyed, stepped forward and hugged the Empress, shaking her hard, thank you so much, Hancock. Quote closing square bracket. Chapter 80. Fatty sees the Empress, his evil fire erupts again and again and again. After receiving the key, Luffy turned and continued his charge toward the execution platform. Hancock was left sitting paralyzed on the ground, her cheeks flushed, her breathing becoming rapid. She raised a hand to caress her chest, her eyes unfocused, murmuring to herself, Is this the legendary marriage? The chaotic battlefield seemed unable to enter her eyes anymore, she was lost in daydreams of staying together with Luffy. In a daze, she caught a glimpse of Smoker raising his weapon to pursue Luffy again. Hancock's eyes instantly turned cold and sharp. Her figure flickered as she dashed forward, her long leg kicking fiercely against his sea stone weapon. The hard weapon was petrified on the spot, losing its effectiveness. Rude wretch, retreat at once. She held her head high, her posture arrogant, as her slender finger pointed contemptuously at Smoker. Smoker said angrily, openly obstructing the Navy's actions, have you thought about what price you will pay? Hancock raised a stunningly beautiful smile, her tone proud and confident, no matter what I do, I will be forgiven, simply because I am too beautiful. Once these words were spoken, the surrounding Navy soldiers instantly lost their focus, all falling into infatuation. Did that Luffy drug her? Once he hugged her, the Empress hasn't been acting right. Are you sure this is content that can be broadcast? I admire Luffy's connections once again, he can even get in with a Shichibukai. And you say the Straw Hat isn't the king of connections? Is the next one the world government? Do they all have people looking after Luffy? Why is the Empress still such a fangirl? This isn't right. Why, how could the Pirate Empress fall for Luffy? They aren't even the same type of people. But the Empress's personality is too arrogant. Does she really think she can win infinite forgiveness just by relying on her beauty? So you're acting tough after pulling up your pants. I'm just asking, do you forgive her or not? There were also those uninterested in women, who said in a deep voice, even a weapon made of sea stone was petrified. The Empress's strength is probably beyond imagination. Shrek Academy. The people in the academy all looked toward the Sky Canopy. Oscar, watching the Empress's look of deep adoration, immediately slumped his face, covered his face, and wailed, Boss Dai, I've been dumped. Woo woo woo. Daimubai, standing to the side, completely ignored his little tantrum, staring at the screen with a look of utter disbelief. I don't get it. That silly kid Luffy, how did he capture the Empress's heart? In his eyes, the Empress possessed formidable strength, was the noble monarch of a country, and her beauty was peerless. No matter how you looked at it, she should be matched with a prince like himself. He never expected she would fall for an idiot. The two were lamenting when suddenly an exclamation rang out, oh no. Fatty is on fire again. Oscar turned his head to look and saw Ma Hongjun with billowing black flames rising around his body. His eyes were fixed on the Sky Canopy, his face full of infatuation, and he kept muttering, Empress, so beautiful. This massive black flame was the evil fire that had plagued Ma Hongjun for many years. Flender had long said that ordinary means could not extinguish it, and if the evil fire were allowed to rage, it would eventually lead to self-destruction. But Oscar and Dai Mubai were not panicked in the slightest. Ever since the Empress appeared on the sky canopy, whenever she showed her face, Ma Hongjun would trigger his evil fire 9 times out of 10, this had already become the norm. Didn't we tell Fatty to close his eyes whenever the Empress appears? How did he get caught again? Oscar asked, walking over to Zhao Wuji's side. Zhao Wuji looked helpless. This time, he couldn't control himself just from hearing her voice. Dai Mubai walked up, suppressing a smile and teasing, "Teacher Zhao, is it your turn to act this time?" Zhao Wuji grunted. "Stop gloating, one day it will be your turn too." As he finished speaking, he walked up to Ma Hongjun, facing the admiring gazes of all the students in the academy, and shouted loudly at the Void Realm, "Sky Canopy, you are too unfair." With a loud boom, a thunderbolt suddenly struck down, hitting both of them directly. As the lightning faded, only the two of them were left on the spot, numb and twitching continuously, while the black evil fire around Ma Hongjun had vanished without a trace. Also vanished were Ma Hongjun's clothes. No clothes could withstand the combination of evil fire burning and thunderbolt strikes. Therefore, everyone looked speechlessly at the completely naked fatty, who was twitching while lying on top of Zhao Wuji. That's right, this was the way to solve Ma Hongjun's evil fire. The first time Ma Hongjun's evil fire fully erupted because of the Empress, Flender was so anxious he had nowhere to go, and when he asked Yu Shaogang, he just shook his head. In his desperation, Flender cursed the sky canopy beside Ma Hongjun. Unexpectedly, a thunderbolt arrived in response, and the evil fire subsided on the spot. Since then, whenever Ma Hongjun's evil fire acted up, everyone followed suit. However, while the method was found, the teachers were all feeling insecure, because the thunderbolts had almost taken turns striking every teacher at Shrek Academy. Except for Yu Shaogang. Dai Mubai looked at Yu Shaogang and saw him quietly shrink his neck and silently take several steps back. His reason for refusing couldn't even be refuted, he wasn't even level 30 yet. He couldn't withstand the blast. Zhu Zuqing, standing to the side, watched this scene of chaotic madness and felt even more confused. Can one really change their destiny here? Ivankov looked at Doflamingo and the tyrant Kuma beside him, his face full of disbelief, and asked in a deep voice, "You say Kuma is already dead? But he is clearly standing right here, alive and well." Doflamingo curled his lips into a sinister smile and raised a finger to point at Kuma. "I can see that you and he are quite close. However, the Kuma in your memories has long since ceased to exist." Absolutely impossible. Ivankov refused to believe it, staring fixedly at Kuma and shouting, "Kuma's spirit is the Papa, that cannot change. Answer me, Kuma." But his old friend's eyes were cold and empty, like a puppet without a soul, remaining silent from beginning to end without the slightest response. "The Kuma you know has long since disappeared." Doflamingo chuckled. "A few days ago, under the modification of the scientist Vegapunk, he completely became a human weapon for the world government." Modified weapon? What on earth is going on? Ivankov was deeply shocked. He volunteered to be modified. Doflamingo slowly revealed the truth, starting from his hands, then to his legs. While his consciousness was still clear, he allowed his body to be modified step by step. Nonsense. Ivankov retorted angrily. Kuma has always hated the world government, how could he be willing to be manipulated? Doflamingo didn't explain, simply stating the information he knew. A few days ago, he still retained his self-consciousness, but now his consciousness has completely dissipated, and he is no different from a corpse. Before the words fell, Kuma completed his information scan, light condensed in his mouth, and a beam of light shot directly at Ivankov. Ivankov hurriedly dodged the attack, watching his old friend who once fought by his side turn into a killing machine. "Kuma, what on earth have you experienced all these years?" Chapter 81. Kuma is actually a cyborg. Under the stunned gazes of Luffy and Ivankov, Kuma's figure flickered, instantly flashing behind the group of pirates. He slowly removed the gloves from his hands, and killing intent suddenly surged. Seeing this, Luffy hurriedly called out a warning, "Everyone, be careful." But the warning came too late. With an expressionless face, Kuma spat out 3 words in a deep voice, "Pressure cannon." A transparent paw print blast broke through the air, its speed far exceeding usual. Loud bangs rang out in succession, and the pirates in front were instantly sent reeling, their formation thrown into chaos. Witnessing a former comrade reduced to a killing machine, Ivankov was both furious and pained, immediately leaping forward to intercept. Taking advantage of the gap while Kuma scanned for targets, he multiplied his head into dozens of afterimages, spreading them out side by side. Galaxy Wink. A massive shockwave whistled out, sending Kuma flying. Ivankov turned his head and shouted instructions to those behind him, "Leave Kuma to me. Protect the straw hat and keep charging forward." Beneath the sky canopy, everyone watched with their mouths agape. I knew Kuma had a faster version of that move. Is that the point? Didn't you hear? Kuma has been modified. How is this done? His body doesn't even seem to be flesh and blood anymore, just metal and such. And his consciousness, can that be replaced too? What an evil technology. How is this any different from being dead? He has become a weapon belonging to the world government. It chills me to hear this. Didn't they say that after a person dies, the martial soul fruit of the pirate continent will be reborn? How can he still use his spirit? I suddenly feel that the world government is not right either. By the way, have they created another species? The Kuma that appeared earlier, constantly firing lasers, definitely isn't human. It should be some kind of puppet, not a new species. Otherwise, wouldn't that person named Vegapunk have stepped into the realm of the heavenly god? And Doflamingo, is he providing commentary for the whole scene? These things should be secrets. Doflamingo actually just blurted them out. He's just trying to make the war even more chaotic. Stardow Great Forest. The entire dense forest was silent. The group of vicious beasts stared intently at the images on the sky canopy showing Kuma being gradually modified. Even the usually composed N.A.N couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. The humans of that continent are so ruthless. Wan Yao Wang spoke, voicing the thoughts of all the vicious beasts present. Kai Wang agreed in a rough voice, that's right. Even when humans of the Duluo continent fight and kill, it's just ending lives. But the people of the pirate continent actually want to forcibly transform their own kind into weapons that obey orders for life, and slaves driven by others. Shang Jun sneered. I originally thought the way the Hokage continent oppressed the tailed beasts was the limit, but I didn't expect humans to have even more ruthless methods, and against their own kind at that. The further he spoke, the deeper the sarcasm in his words became. Beside her, Baiji frowned slightly, full of worry. If even a top powerhouse like Kuma can be transformed into a puppet without any self, then can ordinary humans, or even as spirit beasts, escape this fate? If this technology becomes widespread, the number of human powerhouses will surely skyrocket. These words were like a thunderclap. All the vicious beasts were stunned, then immediately realized the key to it. On the Duluo continent, humans are shackled by lifespan. Even a level 99 limit Duluo only lives for a few hundred years, making it difficult to accumulate a foundation for long. But spirit beasts are different. Whenever they make a breakthrough in realm, their lifespan increases by 10,000 years, allowing powerhouses to persist through generations. This is the fundamental reason why the overall strength of spirit beasts has long surpassed that of humans. However, the modification technology displayed on the sky canopy completely shattered this balance. Once a living being is manufactured into an artificial weapon, it can break free from the shackles of lifespan, allowing power to remain permanently and even be passed down through generations. N.A.N's expression was grave as he said in a low voice, it seems that the threat from that continent is far more terrifying than we estimated. After a brief pause, his gaze suddenly became incredibly firm, and he said word by word, however, we will never retreat or give up because of this. The resolute words dispelled the confusion in the hearts of the vicious beasts. Crocodile lurked beneath the Moby Dick, his gaze locked tightly onto Whitebeard, killing intent surging around him. Upon seeing this, the pirates under Whitebeard's command charged out in unison, shouting to intercept him, we must not let him get near Pops. But the gap in strength between the two sides was vast. Crocodile raised his hand and whipped up a sky-filling sandstorm, the raging wind and sand instantly sweeping across the field, knocking back all the pirates who charged forward. Whitebeard looked at him, rarely showing a look of headache. What a troublesome guy, choosing to disrupt things at a time like this. Before he finished speaking, the 3rd Division Commander Jozu suddenly appeared. Half of his body transformed into brilliant diamond, with a faint black glow lingering on the surface, his figure lunging forward swiftly. Brilliant charge. Borrowing the momentum of his massive body, Jozu fiercely delivered a shoulder bash, the force unmatched and fierce, directly sending Crocodile flying. Crocodile staggered as he landed, raising his golden hook to wipe the blood from the corner of his mouth, his tone carrying a hint of wariness, such a massive body, yet the speed is not slow at all. Diamond Jozu, you truly live up to your reputation. The two immediately stood in a standoff across the distance, the atmosphere tense. Just then, Doflamingo quietly appeared, his toes lightly tapping down onto Jozu's back. He moved his fingertips slightly, and invisible threads instantly wrapped around Jozu's body, causing the latter's limbs to suddenly stiffen, unable to move. Doflamingo looked down at Crocodile below, chuckling, how about it, do you want to join forces with me? Crocodile showed a look of disgust, replying coldly, stop getting in my way. This crocodile is truly persistent. Targeting the most important character on the field. Why doesn't Whitebeard just make a move himself? Maybe Whitebeard is old, he doesn't want to waste his energy here. It seems that the added black luster can indeed restrain Logia types. One hit. Why is Doflamingo here again? Why does he have to stick his nose into everything? No choice, who told him to be so strong? He controlled Jozu with just a wave of his hand. Isn't his threat a bit too sturdy? The sky canopy camera shifted, focusing on the route of Luffy's advance. Marines kept blocking the path, but this time the situation quietly changed. The impelled down prisoners, entrusted by Ivankov, appeared in unison, desperately holding back the Marine offensive, clearing the path ahead for Luffy and causing his speed of advance to suddenly increase. Luffy looked up at the high execution platform, clearly able to feel that he was getting closer and closer days. A sudden change occurred. Several sharp sword chi attacks suddenly tore through the air, and the prisoners blocking the way fell one after another. Luffy's heart tightened. He looked up, and amidst the dust filling the sky, a tall, upright figure slowly appeared. It was Dracula Mahawk, holding the Black Blade Yuru, one of the 12 supreme grade swords, his presence sharp and intimidating. He thought to himself, sorry, red-haired. In this battle, I will absolutely not show mercy. Chapter 82. Hawkeye strikes again, Haki explained. His gaze fell upon Luffy, his tone flat yet tinged with scrutiny. How will fate choose? Will this prodigy of the current generation fall here, or can he narrowly escape from my blade? His gaze, sharp as a hawk, crossed over the blade and locked firmly onto the youth below. Luffy recognized the world's greatest swordsman instantly. White steam erupted from his body as he activated Gear Second, not pausing his steps as he continued to charge fiercely toward the execution platform. Two unyielding Okama swordsmen stepped forward to block him, only to be defeated by Hawkeye in an instant. He dropped an indifferent remark. Mere ants, I cannot be bothered to remember you one by one. Before the words had even faded, Hawkeye focused his grip on his sword, drawing and swinging in a motion that was simple to the extreme, yet contained an unrivaled, domineering power. A massive arc of sword chi tore across the sky, slicing through the air as it headed straight for Luffy. Luffy managed to narrowly dodge by shifting his body at high speed, but he could not check his momentum and slammed heavily into the solid wall. With a loud boom, the wall crumbled, large chunks of stone flew, and hideous cracks spread across its surface. Just as Hawkeye was about to strike again, a figure arrived riding the waves, blocking the space between the two. As expected of Ace's brother, to be able to dodge that fatal blow. Jinbei turned his head to look at Luffy, his tone tinged with approval, before turning to face Hawkeye with a resolute expression. I will never let you lay another finger on Luffy, even if it costs me my life. I see. Hawkeye's expression remained calm as he walked forward. The cannonballs attacking from midair were casually neutralized by Jinbei using Fishman Karate. He pushed off the waves beneath his feet, his palms gathering thick water pressure, and unleashed a palm strike wrapped in surging waves. Hawkeye merely raised his hand and thrust his sword forward. The moment the two figures crossed, a violent burst of sword chi exploded. Jinbei was sent flying by the immense impact, plummeting straight into the sea below. Having dealt with the obstruction, Hawkeye no longer distracted himself. He leapt high into the air, aiming his Black Blade Yuru directly at Luffy as he thrust downward. Luffy again managed to narrowly dodge with his flexible body, stretching his arms far back, intending to unleash a gum-gum rocket for a counterattack. However, a vision of his arms being severed by the blade suddenly flashed through his mind, his heart chilled, and he immediately forced himself to halt his attack. Hawkeye took in this scene and said coldly, "You are quite calm." He twisted his wrist and swung his long blade horizontally. A massive wave of sword chi roared outward. Luffy bent low to barely dodge, but the others on the battlefield had no chance to evade. This horizontal slash extended outward, its power magnifying continuously, until it actually cleaved the giant iceberg standing in the center of the battlefield in two. The upper half of the mountain flew forward from inertia, shattering in midair, and countless chunks of ice rained down upon the battlefield. Soldiers and pirates who could not dodge in time were crushed on the spot by the giant rocks, and screams rang out one after another, making the scene increasingly tragic. Shocked every time I see it, the slash of the world's greatest swordsman. It's no different from a god. Even a mountain was cut in two. I'm afraid quite a few people were crushed to death just by the falling debris. But is the gap between the Shichibukai really that big? Jinbei couldn't even block a single sword strike. Luffy is still far from being on the level of such a powerhouse. How is he going to deal with Hawkeye? He's not going to rely on his background again, is he? Did you guys notice? What was up with that vision Luffy had of his hands being cut off? Did he see the future? How is that possible? Where would such an ability come from? Just then, as if the sky canopy sensed the confusion of the people on the Duluo continent, golden characters appeared, beginning to explain Haki. Haki is a latent mental force inherent to all races in the pirate continent. It is a top-tier combat system distinct from martial soul fruit, divided into three types: observation, armament, and conquerors. The former two can be improved through cultivate, while conquerors is an innate aptitude found in 1 in a million. Observation Haki. Basic abilities: detecting enemies outside of one's field of vision, sensing numbers and movements, and predicting attack trajectories. Advanced abilities: foresight, briefly seeing images seconds into the future. Sensing emotions or inner voices, and hearing the voice of all things. Armament Haki. Core functions: hardening defense, strengthening attacks, and touching the physical bodies of Logia users. It is the key to countering Logia types. Basic hardening: turning the surface of the body or weapons black and hard, like steel armor, standard entry-level equipment for the new world. Haki binding: highly concentrating and covering Haki to attack from a distance and amplify power. Ryu: an advanced application of armament Haki that ignores defense to strike the internal organs directly. Conqueror's Haki. Core function: using one's spirit to intimidate or knock out fodder. It is the aptitude of a king, and cannot be gained through acquired cultivate. Basic intimidation: releasing pressure to knock out the weak-willed in batches. Precise crowd control: releasing it while locking onto targets, without affecting allies. Advanced binding: standard for the four emperors or top powerhouses, imbuing weapons with terrifying attack power. So that's it. Marco attacking Kizaru and Jozu crashing into Crocodile earlier were both using armament Haki. This armament Haki not only allows one to attack Logia types, but also increases defense and enhances attack strength. This is just too perfect. And that observation Haki, so Luffy was sensing the attack trajectory, not the future. But it's still exaggerated. Okay, what's the difference between this and seeing the future? The only difference is that observation Haki can actually see the future. It's too exaggerated. And that Conqueror's Haki, if you have it, wouldn't you just clear out all the small fry with a glare? Armies would lose their purpose. I have a question, Whitebeard, why don't you use Conqueror's Haki? Don't tell me one of the four emperors doesn't have it. It's probably the same reason, old age and declining health. No way, that's just a catch-all answer, right? It's not right, it must be that there are also people with Conqueror's Haki in the Navy who can cancel it out, making it meaningless. 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. In the open space in front of the sect, everyone's gaze was fixed on the sky canopy hanging high above. Sword Duluo Chenshin stared fixedly at the sharp sword Chi Hawkeye unleashed one after another on the screen, his eyes filled with extreme longing and shock, and he couldn't help but exclaim, "This kind of sword Dao, truly, the more I see it, the more amazed I become." Beside him, Bone Duluo Gu Rong nodded repeatedly, his expression incredibly grave. He knew his own limits. If he were to face those slashes that had traversed the battlefield head-on, he wouldn't be able to withstand a single one. Ning Fengji stood beside the two, a layer of deep worry covering his brow as he spoke in a low voice. "Uncle Sword, Uncle Bone, I fear our focus in seeking opportunity must change completely." Chenshin and Ji Yurong turned their heads simultaneously, their eyes filled with confusion. Ning Fengji looked at the sky canopy and slowly analyzed. The three-colored Haki explained just now likely has a ceiling that surpasses even the martial soul fruit. It is compatible with any living being, without the harsh restrictions of spirit or physique, and it encompasses offense, defense, and perception alike. A Haki practitioner who has reached the peak could abandon all their spirit ability and still roam the world freely, relying solely on their own spirit. Bone Duluo was instantly enlightened and realized, it combines strong offense, defensive protection, predictive restraint, and encompasses everything. While it may not compare to the complex ninjutsu of the Hokage world in terms of variety of move, it excels in its simplicity to master, not requiring decades of researching massive amounts of techniques. Ning Fengji nodded gently and summarized clearly. The big picture is now clear. The 3 most precious opportunities in the pirate continent should be ranked as follows. The first is the complete cultivate method for the 3-colored Haki, followed by the various devil fruits, and finally, the forging method for the standard issue navy cannons. Chapter 83. Luffy actually used his brain. The sky canopy continues to play. The camera cuts to Crocodile and Doflamingo. Doflamingo still stepped on the back of Diamond Jozu, who was immobilized by strings, a wild and arrogant smile hanging on his lips. The era of old-school pirates like Whitebeard ruling the sea should have ended long ago. From now on, in these waters, power is the only truth. A new era belonging to you and me will soon descend. Do you want to join forces with me and grab a piece of the pie? Crocodile instantly sensed the other party's intention to recruit him and scoffed. If we are to join forces, you should be my subordinate. As his words fell, a small sandstorm swirled in his palm, and he swung it forward violently. Disappear, Doflamingo, you scum. The sandstorm suddenly expanded upon hitting the ground, the violent yellow sand instantly wrapping around Jozu. Doflamingo sneered, soared into the air using his strings, and easily dodged the attack. The attack missed, but the sandstorm did not dissipate, sweeping forward and engulfing everyone in its path, including Buggy the Clown, who was standing with his hands on his hips. When the dust settled, Buggy was thrown directly into the center of the battlefield where Luffy and Mihawk were fighting. At this moment, Mihawk no longer unleashed those massive long-range slashes. Instead, he used layers upon layers of dense sword chi, moving at extreme speed, one slash stacking upon another, leaving no room for escape. Even with Luffy activating Gear 2 to increase his speed, he could only dodge in a miserable state, every step fraught with danger. After several dodges, Luffy simply stopped retreating and charged straight at Mihawk. A flash of regret crossed Mihawk's eyes. Your speed has indeed improved, but at this distance, you have absolutely no way to dodge this slash. He swung his wrist horizontally, and a slash of sword chi cleaved directly toward Luffy's face. At the critical moment, Luffy's arms stretched infinitely like rubber, grabbing the unsteady Buggy and blocking him in front of himself. Rubber jet scapegoat. Buggy thought he had escaped disaster and was overjoyed. I'm saved. But the sharp slash arrived in an instant, slicing Buggy right down the middle. Fortunately, his chop chop fruit made him immune to slashing damage, and his body immediately reassembled without a single injury. He was just furious, pushing his nose against Luffy's. Straw Hat, what the hell are you doing? Luffy tilted his chin toward Mihawk. He's the one cutting you. Besides, I just saved you from the sandstorm. So that's why the Sky Canopy used Buggy when introducing Paramesha fruits. This ability is truly unsolvable for a swordsman. But doesn't the world's greatest swordsman know Haki? Does armament Haki only counter Logia types? Mihawk definitely knows Haki, maybe he just disdains using it. Stupid, can't you see Mihawk is clearly going easy on him? If he were actually serious, there's no way Luffy would have survived. But Luffy actually used his brain and knew how to use a scapegoat. Yeah, he even knows how to shift the blame, pushing the matter onto Mihawk. So Luffy isn't an idiot after all. Hey, just a little cleverness. To deal with Mihawk, you definitely need a comparable opponent. The Sky Canopy continues to play. Without waiting for Buggy to argue, Luffy raised his hand and threw him away. Go, scapegoat. Mihawk's long sword swung continuously, and the sky full of sword chi hacked toward Buggy in midair, cutting him to pieces. After recovering, Buggy was completely enraged. Unforgivable. Taste my special Buggy ball. A cannonball shot from his toe, heading straight for Mihawk. But Mihawk just flicked his sword casually, and the cannonball changed direction, smashing back at Buggy himself. It exploded with a boom, and Buggy, along with the surrounding pirates, was blown off balance. Taking advantage of the chaos between the two, steam surged under Luffy's feet, and he sprinted toward the execution platform without looking back, shouting from afar, "Thanks, Buggy." How could Mihawk let Luffy escape? He steadied his heart, gathered power, and unleashed another massive slash that spanned the sky. Luffy couldn't dodge in time and was enveloped by the saber chi. Mihawk followed closely, sword in hand, looking as if he were about to decapitate him. In the distance, Whitebeard, who was commanding the battlefield, took in this scene, raised his eyes slightly, and gave a signal to Marco. Marco instantly understood his father's intention, turned his head, and ordered the burly man with two swords beside him loudly, "Vista, father has ordered that we absolutely cannot let Ace's brother die. You must go and cover his breakout immediately." "Understood, leave it to me." Flower Sword Vista was a top-tier swordsman himself. He had been watching Mihawk's battle and had long been eager to cross swords with the world's greatest swordsman. Upon hearing this, he leapt forward, drew his long swords, and steadily blocked that fatal slash. He held his dual swords, his eyes filled with the excitement of fighting a strong opponent. "Nice to meet you, Hawkeye Mihawk, you should have heard of my name, right?" Mihawk looked at the newcomer and spoke lightly. "Flower Sword Vista, famous, I naturally know of you." Mihawk wanted to bypass the obstruction to pursue Luffy but was tightly entangled by Vista. The dual swords and the black blade Yuru collided continuously, the blade light weaving into a biting cold gleam. The fierce exchange made everyone on the field tense up. In the midst of the struggle, Mihawk pondered about Luffy. It's not his ability or his moves, but he can turn the people on the field into his allies one after another. On the sea, this man possesses the most powerful strength. With Flower Sword Vista holding Mihawk back, Luffy completely broke free from the Shichibukai's blockade, broke through heavy defenses, and got closer and closer to the towering execution platform. A comparable opponent really did show up. The Whitebeard pirates really are full of hidden talents. There's even a swordsman who can exchange blows with the world's greatest swordsman. I remember now, it was he who said earlier that any swordsman would have the intention to challenge Mihawk upon seeing him. Then it really wasn't easy for him to hold back for so long. But what did Mihawk mean by that? Isn't it just about the background king? 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. The entire courtyard was silent, and everyone's eyes were fixed on the fierce confrontation between Flower Sword Vista and Mihawk on the sky canopy. Sword Duoluo Chenshin stood with his hands behind his back, his eyes locked on the two intersecting and colliding blade lights, full of fascination, his whole heart immersed in the two completely different sword daos. When the two were briefly deadlocked, Chenshin slowly gathered his focus, closed his eyes, and carefully savored every detail of the exchange just now. Ning Rongrong, who was on the side, saw Grandpa's sword open his eyes and curiously leaned forward to ask, Grandpa Sword, after watching this duel, did you have any new insights? Chen Shin slowly opened his eyes, with the afterimages of blade lights still lingering in them, and sighed, an eye-opener. The sword Dao of these two is completely different. Mahox is one sword breaking 10,000 techniques. No matter what moves or abilities the opponent uses, he only needs a simple slash to split all obstacles. The Dao is simple. As for this flower sword Vista, his sword Dao is the exact opposite. His moves are complex and gorgeous, his dual swords flying in a dazzling array. Every move and every style hides a fatal killing intent, pressing step by step, impossible to defend against. As his words fell, he praised sincerely. No wonder the world calls him Flower Sword, it is well deserved. Ning Rongrong tilted her head and asked, then which category does Grandpa Sword's 7-kill sword Dao lean towards? Chen Shin pondered for a moment and slowly replied, the old man's path is closer to Mahox. It emphasizes offense, seeks the ultimate, and decides victory with one sword. Ning Rongrong's eyes suddenly lit up. Does that mean Grandpa Sword is already very close to that world's greatest swordsman? Sword Duluo wanted to deny it, but Bone Duluo couldn't help but look up and laugh heartily. That's right, Rongrong, your Grandpa Sword is the next world's greatest swordsman. Chapter 84, 100 titled Duluo appear. Sea God Island. The 7 great sacred pillars gathered beneath the temple, their gazes fixed simultaneously upon the battlefield on the sky canopy. Sea Dragon Duluo watched Luffy, who was being protected by others risking their lives every step of the way, and could not help but sigh with genuine emotion. This straw hat is born for the sea. Just as Hawkeye thought, he has the ability to win hearts and minds, making experts from all walks of life willing to become his aide. This is the most supreme power on the sea. Sea Maiden Duluo looked puzzled and questioned softly, but I always feel that he relies entirely on his background to bail him out. How many times has he been trapped in a death trap along the way, only for unexpected helpers to suddenly appear? Most of those people are closely related to his family. Sea Dragon Duluo said, you have never sailed on the sea, so you don't know. The most important thing on the sea is companions. No matter how strong one is alone, it is impossible to cross the boundless sea by oneself. Companions are the foundation for standing on the sea. This requires the ability to gather people's hearts. Straw Hat happens to have it. As for the background you speak of, it is not critical at all. If Luffy himself did not have shining points worthy of recognition, why would Whitebeard, as one of the 4 emperors, specifically order his subordinates to cover him? Take the incident where Ivankov blocked Kuma for example. Is it just because Luffy is Dragon's son? How is that possible? Ultimately, it is because he saw in Luffy the same character as his father, the courage to oppose tyranny and the compassion for his companions. Hearing this analysis, Sea Maiden Duluo lowered her head in thought, and the more she thought about it, the more reasonable it seemed. Even the Empress helping to stop Smoker was because Luffy had conquered the Empress. Even if he didn't realize it. Sea Dragon Duluo stopped midway through his sentence, a hint of confusion lingering between his brows. Seeing this, Sea Maiden Duluo quickly asked, what else do you not understand? I just can't figure out Whitebeard's plan. Sea Dragon Duluo frowned tightly. Even if Luffy rushes all the way to the execution platform, the Fleet Admiral and the 3 admirals are still guarding it. What can a newcomer change on his own? The outcome of this war is simply too far out of his reach. The other sacred pillar Duluo also nodded one after another, filled with the same doubts in their hearts. At this moment, Great Priest Bo Saishi, standing on the high platform, spoke slowly, pointing out the key with one sentence, the core is Garb. Everyone was stunned upon hearing this, their faces full of bewilderment. Great Priest Bo Saishi looked at the Navy hero on the sky canopy, wearing a cape of justice with a complex state of mind, and slowly explained, I can sense the extremely powerful force within Garp, and even more so, I can perceive the struggle and confusion hidden deep in his heart. If any other pirate had come to rescue Ace, Garp would have taken action without mercy to stop them. But the one who came to save him is his other own grandson, so this line of defense constructed by himself can no longer function. Sea Dragon Duluo was instantly enlightened and suddenly realized, so that's it. Whitebeard intends to use Luffy to neutralize the Navy's strongest trump card, Garp. The sky canopy continued to play. Sengoku on the execution platform had a cold expression and suddenly ordered sternly to cut off all Den Den Mushi broadcasts to the outside world. This war is a confrontation between our Navy and the world government, launched in the name of justice, and we must win. We will spare no means to achieve victory. But the current battlefield footage is too tragic and bloody, not suitable for ordinary people to watch. Once the war is settled in a few hours, we only need to announce the Navy's great victory to the whole world. That one sentence will be enough. Beneath the sky canopy, various forces on the Duluo continent witnessed this scene, and discussions immediately erupted, with unease rising in their hearts. The Navy suddenly cut off the broadcast. What exactly do they intend to do? To win at all costs. This statement clearly hides some sinister and unspeakable methods. The war has reached this point, and the Navy actually still has a backup plan. Using any means to achieve victory, that is too ruthless. concealing the battle situation throughout and only announcing victory to the outside world. This cannot be called justice at all. Luffy is clearly within reach of the execution platform, so why hasn't he been able to rush up? While everyone was arguing endlessly, the scene on the sky canopy changed abruptly. From the direction of the bay, hundreds of lasers suddenly shot out, and the warships of the Whitebeard pirates docked outside exploded and burned one after another, almost completely wiped out. Look at the bay entrance. What is that? A pirate screamed in terror. Everyone looked up and saw a large number of humanoid weapons with the exact same appearance as Tyrant Kuma stepping forward in unison, their movements stiff and numb, completely devoid of self-awareness, like controlled puppets. Countless pacifistas split up and surrounded them, completely locking off all retreat routes for the pirates. Many knowledgeable pirates instantly recognized what these things were. The human weapons that Vegapunk spent many years developing. Sengoku shouted the order without hesitation, all pacifista, attack with full force. Do not worry about damage to our own warships. As the order was given, over 100 pacifista lined up in 2 rows. Some raised their palms, with blinding beams of light gathering in their palms, others bowed slightly, with light gathering in their big mouths. In an instant, 100 lasers poured down simultaneously, covering the entire Marineford battlefield with bright light. The pirate camp suffered a devastating blow instantly, and screams rose one after another. The slaughter did not stop there. All the pacifista leapt onto the remaining pirate ships, wantonly releasing lasers, cutting off the pirates' last reliance for retreat. The pirates fought back desperately, firing bullets and cannonballs madly at the humanoid weapons, but the cannonballs only sparked upon impact, and the bullets could not even penetrate the outer armor. All attacks were completely ineffective. Losing the protection of their warships and unable to harm the enemy at all, the pirate side could only passively endure the one-sided slaughter, and the situation instantly fell into a desperate state. This is simply a massacre. Are those things modified based on Kuma? That's too terrifying. This attack is simply equivalent to a powerful 10,000-year spirit ability. What on earth has the world government developed? With this many of them, how can low-level pirates survive? No wonder they didn't let the public see it. This scene is too cruel. They even gave up on the navy in the battlefield. This fleet admiral is truly cruel. The Whitebeard pirates have no retreat left. Their ships are almost all about to be blown up. Star Luo Empire, Star Luo Imperial Palace. The Star Luo Emperor's gaze was locked tightly on the pacifista wantonly slaughtering in the sky canopy, so burning that it seemed as if it would ignite the image. Good stuff. Absolutely good stuff. Unwavering loyalty, both offensive and defensive. This is the most perfect war weapon. Below the steps, a spirit du Luo dressed in purple robes bowed and stepped out, his eyes filled with shock. Your Majesty, from what I observe of their laser power and defensive strength, they are at least comparable to a spirit du Luo with a top-tier offensive spirit ability. Ordinary spirit saints and spirit du Luo cannot break their defense at all. The Star Luo Emperor shook his head and said, not just that. Low-rank titled du Luo might not even be a match for one of them in a one-on-one fight. As soon as these words were spoken, the Star Luo Hall instantly fell into dead silence. 100 weapons comparable to titled du Luo. Doesn't that mean the pirate side is instantly in a desperate situation? Such a creation, if only we in Star Luo possessed it. The officials whispered to each other, their breathing becoming rapid. Chapter 85. Sengoku is going to be furious. The Star Luo Empire was already known for its iron-blooded militarism, and its desire for weapons of war was carved into its very bones. Seeing the terrifying combat power of the pacifista, how could they not be stirred? The Star Luo Emperor raised a hand to silence the discussion, his gaze still glued to the sky canopy, his tone fanatical. More importantly, it can be mass-produced. With this thing, low and mid-level spirit master legions can be replaced. He stood up abruptly, his voice resounding through the great hall. If my Star Luo masters this technology and builds a legion of 1,000,000 pacifista, why fear the Spirit Hall? Why fear the Heaven Do Empire? By then, the entire Du Luo continent will belong to Star Luo. The ministers in the hall bowed in unison, shouting, Your Majesty is wise, the sound so powerful that the white tiger relief on the hall ceiling seemed to come alive. The sky canopy continued to play. The situation on the battlefield took a sharp turn for the worse. Whitebeard saw through the desperate predicament the Whitebeard pirates were in. He gripped the Murakumogiri with one hand and slammed the long blade heavily into the deck beneath his feet, causing the entire ice sheet to tremble violently. His loud, majestic roar resounded throughout Marineford. Do not retreat, my sons. Charge onto the plaza in one go. The magnificent and heroic aura swept across the entire battlefield. The pirates, whose morale had been low due to the pacifista encirclement, instantly surged in spirit. Their eyes reddened as they rushed desperately toward the execution platform on the heights. Marco circled in the air, taking in the situation below. Now that the retreat was completely sealed off by the pacifista, if they were caught in a pincer attack between the Navy and the mass-produced weapons, everyone would be buried here. Only by reaching Ace first would there be a glimmer of hope. Seeing the pirates launching a desperate counterattack, Sengoku, on the execution platform, looked tense and immediately gave a loud order: everyone, withdraw from the ice immediately. Block them at all costs, do not let the pirates approach the execution platform. Large numbers of Navy soldiers quickly and orderly retreated, opening up a defensive line to tightly guard the path to the high platform. On one side of the battlefield, the clash between Mihawk and Vista never ceased, their blades constantly colliding and emitting blinding sparks. Separating after a hard strike, Vista's face was filled with the joy of a fierce battle as he laughed aloud. To be able to have a fierce battle with the world's greatest swordsman on the battlefield is the greatest honor of my life. Mihawk's expression was indifferent, the cold light flowing on the black blade Yuru in his hand. The first swordsman under Whitebeard, show me all your swordsmanship. The two ignored the orders to mobilize from both the Navy and the pirates on the battlefield. The chaos of the world did not enter their eyes. In their hearts, there was only the pure sword heart of seeking the Tao. Vista laughed aloud, his figure suddenly leaping high into the air, his dual blades spinning rapidly before him, thousands of blade shadows intertwining and blooming. Rose Rondo. Petals filled the sky, scattering with the saber chi. The scene was brilliant and beautiful, but hidden beneath every petal was a lethal killing intent. Mihawk's gaze swept indifferently over the incoming rose blade shadows. His wrist exerted steady force as he swung his single blade horizontally. A condensed and domineering slash swept straight out, shattering all the flying petals along the way. The momentum of the blade did not diminish in the slightest, heading straight for Vista himself. Vista immediately crossed his dual blades to block in front of him. The ear-piercing sound of metal scraping violently was extremely harsh. He used the impact to lift his blades upward to dissipate the force. The two colliding saber chi rushed straight into the clouds, instantly clearing the air. On the other side, Luffy was still running desperately toward the execution platform. Just as the path ahead was about to open up, a blinding golden light suddenly pierced out. Kizaru Borsalino appeared out of thin air, raised his leg, and delivered a light-speed kick straight at Luffy's chest. Be a good boy and retreat. As the playful and mocking voice fell, Luffy was kicked away like a kite with a broken string. Fortunately, as he fell, Jinbei stepped on the waves in time to catch him steadily. To run into an admiral, this is trouble. Luffy looked annoyed. Just as Jinbei intended to block Kizaru alone to create a breakout opportunity for Luffy, a Navy soldier in the shadows had already raised his musket, locking the muzzle firmly on Luffy and pulling the trigger. Bang! The gunshot rang out suddenly. It was not Luffy who fell to the ground, but the Navy soldier who fired the shot, who slumped straight to the ground. The camera shifted to reveal a fair-skinned woman standing not far away. It was she who had just intervened. Surrounded by rough-looking and fierce-looking pirate captains, her delicate appearance was exceptionally striking, standing out from the crowd at a glance. What a gorgeous sword technique. This Vista. Really, how did he do that? The sword chi turned into petals. Mihawk is really plain and simple. Any fancy sword move is just one slash. No, why is Luffy still on the way to the execution platform? I feel like he's been walking for half a year. Kizaru is here again, kick him back to where he started in one go, a waste of time. Who is the person who saved him? So beautiful. The Whitebeard pirates have such a beautiful captain. Compared to the Empress, I prefer this type. I think I'm in love. The eyes of all forces on the entire Duluo continent were glued to the sky canopy. Everyone was still secretly marveling at the woman's delicate and outstanding appearance when, in the next second, the other party opened their mouth to speak. A very masculine male voice suddenly resounded through the world, forming an extreme contrast with that delicate and fair face, and the whole audience was in an uproar. The heroic voice sounded again. Ace's little brother, are you already exhausted? Who is speaking? It's a man, so beautiful and actually a man. Can't accept this. Even worse than Ivankov, this is the true Okama king, right? I'm heartbroken. Sengoku, who had looked like everything was under control just a moment ago, now had a thick look of anxiety on his face. He turned his head and sternly questioned the communications soldier beside him. Didn't I order the external broadcast signal to be cut off long ago? Why is the image still circulating? The communications soldier was sweating profusely, his hands operating the instruments rapidly, and he replied in a panic, report to the fleet admiral, there is only one last line left. Give me a moment, only the last signal source has not been cut off. Cut it off immediately, as fast as you can. Sengoku roared sternly, his heart full of unease, fearing that images that should not be spread would spread to the four seas. On the other side of the battlefield, Buggy and his gang were fiddling with the Den Mushi they had luckily picked up. After a few adjustments, the broadcast that had been interrupted and aimed at the entire Pirate Sea area was restarted. The camera first gave a shot of a back, the person wearing a standard navy coat, with the word, Justice, on the back heavily crossed out. The narrator's voice came. This person has always deliberately hidden his identity. His true background is immense. He was a crew member on the ship of the pirate King Galdi. Roger, and is even the sworn brother who grew up with the four emperors Shanks, the great pirate, Buggy. Before the words fell, the camera turned, and Buggy's funny big face with a missing front tooth was suddenly shoved in front of the N.A.N. Mushi lens, laughing wildly. That's right, it's me. He scratched his head and muttered pretentiously, however, as a legendary pirate, shouldn't my identity be kept secret? Chapter 86, Whitebeard betrayed by his son. As his voice trailed off, Buggy stuck his thumb out and jabbed it heavily toward his own chest. His vanity was completely overflowing, and 2 streams of bright red nosebleed flowed uncontrollably from his nostrils, making him look both comical and exaggerated. The scene immediately descended into chaos. Seeing this, Sengoku on the execution platform clenched his fists until the veins popped, his fury rushing to his head. He roared at his subordinates, urging them, "What is all this? Hurry, cut this signal immediately, don't let it stay on for even another second. Ha 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 ha, look how anxious Sengoku is. The fleet admiral is going to be so angry he dies. And they still can't cut it. Ha ha ha. Hasn't he always been in control of everything? He's really anxious this time. Well, of course, in just that short while, he's practically leaked the entire Navy's massacre plan. This Buggy is really hilarious. But did he really stay on the Pirate King's ship? Is he really the sworn brother of the 4 emperors Shanks? Why do I feel like he's just bragging? What level are the 4 emperors? And what about Buggy? If he didn't have his chop fruit powers, he would have been chopped up long ago. I suddenly feel like the 4 emperors Shanks' prestige keeps dropping. First, he lost an arm in the East Blue, and now he's sworn brothers with this Buggy. What if this Buggy is hiding his true strength? I don't see anything about him hiding his strength, what I see is that he is truly lucky. The camera cut back to the chaotic battlefield, where hundreds of pacifists acted like tireless killing machines. With lasers sweeping across the field and heavy armor that was hard to break, the Whitebeard pirates' battle lines were collapsing everywhere, falling into a disadvantage. Wails and the sounds of explosions were intertwined incessantly. On the main deck of the Moby Dick, Whitebeard gripped his Murakumogiri, gazing heavily at the tragic battle below. His brows were tightly furrowed, and his expression was extremely grave. Just then, steady footsteps approached from behind him. Pops. Whitebeard slowly turned his head upon hearing the voice. Seeing that the person was Squard, a touch of concern immediately welled up in his eyes. Squard, you aren't hurt, are you? By luck, I'm still alive. As Squard replied, he walked quickly toward Whitebeard, his tone filled with grief and indignation. My pirate crew has suffered heavy casualties, so I specifically bypassed the front lines to take a shortcut to come see you. Whitebeard sighed heavily, his eyes filled with heaviness. Sengoku is surely pouring all his forces into surrounding and annihilating us this time, he won't show any mercy. Believing that the person behind him was his beloved adopted son, Whitebeard completely let down his guard. He turned back around, looking toward the distant execution platform, and said in a deep voice, however, the Navy surrounding us from the rear is exactly what I intended. I'm going to attack too, we must push our way in all at once. In the air below the deck, Marco saw this scene from afar, and a trace of unease inexplicably arose in his heart. He whispered in secret confusion. Squard was clearly blocked by the Navy on the other side of the battle line, so how could he have circled behind Pops alone? Why do I feel like something is wrong? Why does this Squard look so sinister? That's just your imagination. They're pirates, how handsome do you expect them to be? Besides, there's still observation hockey, right? As one of the 4 emperors, Whitebeard can't possibly not know it. But Whitebeard is really tall. Squard only reaches his knees in front of him. Just as everyone under the sky canopy was discussing it, the incident occurred. Squard walked step by step behind Whitebeard, his voice sounding full of grief, indignation, and gratitude. All of us on our 43 pirate ships have received great kindness from you, Pops. If it is for the Whitebeard pirates, even if we have to go through fire and water, we will never have a single word of complaint. Before the words had even faded, he quietly drew the long sword from his waist, its cold light faintly revealed. Whitebeard only thought he was heartbroken over the casualties of his men, and a bit of guilt arose in his heart. He spoke gently to comfort him. I'm sorry, but this is... I understand. Squard interrupted Whitebeard. This is a battle to protect family. The pirate Whitebeard will absolutely never abandon his family. It is precisely because you are like this that everyone followed you into this hell. Whitebeard remained silent. He just stepped forward. And Squard continued. If only your family included us. As his voice fell, he let go of the tightly gripped scabbard, the blade of his long sword pointing directly at Whitebeard. Just at this moment, a cannonball from the distant Navy position came whistling through the air. Whitebeard instinctively raised his hand to block the incoming artillery fire, his body pausing briefly, revealing a completely undefended opening. It was in this split second of an opening that Squard used all his strength to thrust the long sword in his hand forward fiercely, the sharp blade piercing straight through Whitebeard's broad body. Blood slowly dripped down the blade. On the massive deck of the Moby Dick, and even the entire battlefield, it instantly fell into dead silence. Holy shit, he really betrayed him, this Squard. I told you this guy was sinister, he didn't look like a good person at first glance. He really is a filial son. But why? He was fine just a moment ago. He was even calling him Pops. Could it be that he betrayed him because he said his 43 pirate ships were wiped out? But why couldn't Whitebeard react in time? Yeah, he's one of the 4 emperors. Level 99, how could he not have observation hockey? You've got to be kidding me. It can't be that he's old and frail, can it? It's also possible that Whitebeard was just very trusting of his son. The camera swept across the entire Marineford battlefield. Ace on the execution platform had his eyes wide open, his face written with complete disbelief, his whole body stiff. Marco, Josu, Vista, and the other division commanders were all frozen in place, their minds trembling. They forgot to fight, forgot to defend, their gazes nailed firmly onto the blood-stained Whitebeard on the Moby Dick. Even the Shichibukai, who were confronting and fighting each other nearby, stopped their actions one after another, astonishment flashing in their eyes. No one expected that Whitebeard would be sneak attacked and severely wounded by his own adopted son. Conversely, on the high execution platform, the 4 high-ranking officials, Sengoku, Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu, had calm, ripple-free expressions, without a shred of surprise, as if this scene had long been in their expectations. After a long, deadlocked silence, Squard breathed heavily, the arm holding the sword trembling slightly. Whitebeard just quietly turned his head to look at him. The long sword pierced through his chest, and blood soaked his white coat, yet there was not a shred of anger, nor did he raise his hand to counterattack. He was as calm as if the heart-piercing stab from just a moment ago had never happened. A moment later, Marco suddenly snapped back to reality. His flaming wings burst into flames, and he dived onto the deck like a madman, grabbing Squard and slamming him fiercely into the ground, roaring sternly and questioning, "Why did you commit such an act of treason? Answer me, Squard." Squard's cheek was scraped and broken by the friction against the ground, but he still had a stubborn look on his face, gritting his teeth and growling, it was you who forced me." Marco, his heart burning with rage, was about to denounce him when he caught a glimpse of Whitebeard's body swaying unsteadily. His heart tightened, and he quickly pushed Squard aside and stepped forward, reaching out to steadily support his Pops, his voice trembling, "Pops." Chapter 87, Akainu's reputation plummets. Squard struggled to climb up from the ground. He looked up at Whitebeard with a look of defiance and sorrow, shouting loudly, "This ridiculous war should come to an end, Whitebeard. You've been colluding with the Navy in secret all along, haven't you? You can protect the Whitebeard pirates and Ace's life, that's the promise Sengoku gave you." These words spread across the battlefield. All the subordinate pirates who had come to provide support froze, a deep sense of confusion welling up in their hearts, their gazes towards Whitebeard filled with hesitation. Squard roared at the top of his lungs, making sure everyone could hear his accusation clearly, "Listen closely, everyone. We have all fallen into a trap. It wasn't until today that I learned Ace is the biological son of Galdi. Roger." He panted heavily, the hatred accumulated over many years erupting completely. "Back then, when you took in a lone wanderer like me, you should have known why I was alone. All of my comrades died at the hands of Roger. You knew perfectly well about my monstrous hatred for Roger. But from start to finish, you hid the truth and never told me about Ace's parentage. You were planning to support Roger's son and let Ace inherit the title of Pirate King." The roar of artillery fire all around made Squard's sorrowful and indignant accusation sound exceptionally clear and piercing. "I used to sincerely treat Ace like my own brother, thinking about it now, it just feels ironic. After Ace was captured, your core pirate crew was on the inside of the bay, while we 43 subordinate pirate crews were used as cannon fodder on the outside. You intended to sacrifice all our lives to exchange for Ace's safe escape. You already reached a deal with Sengoku, didn't you? Could it be true? Is that really what Whitebeard is thinking? If this is true, that's just too despicable. I think it's possible. After all, Whitebeard is a pirate. What kind of morality can you speak of?" "That's right. Anyway, it's just some subordinate pirates dying. Not his direct crew. Regardless of whether it's true or false, the pirates' morale has plummeted, and defeat is only a matter of time. Things are really spiraling out of control." Spirit Hall, Elder Hall. Inside the towering and solemn Elder Hall, a group of titled Duluos stared in unison at the scene on the sky canopy where Whitebeard was pierced through the body by his trusted subordinate. The atmosphere was heavy and oppressive. Lion Duluo frowned and turned to look at Qian Daliu in the main seat, full of confusion. "Big brother, is what Squard said true? Would Whitebeard really betray all his subordinates for Ace's sake?" Qian Daliu's gaze swept over the various elders in the hall, and he asked indifferently, "What do you think?" Gold Crocodile Duluo's tone was firm and decisive, "Absolutely impossible. The sky canopy has shown Whitebeard's character several times. He has a heroic and open mind, and is definitely not the kind of insidious person who schemes behind others' backs." The other elders echoed him, all agreeing with Gold Crocodile Duluo's assessment. Qian Daliu nodded slightly. "I can also sense the sincerity in Whitebeard's heart. He acts openly and honestly, and would never stoop to such despicable trades to secure a way out. Changing the subject, his tone sank, but after the stab, Whitebeard is now in a desperate situation. Lion Duluo was even more confused. Since it scored slandering and betraying him without cause, couldn't Whitebeard just kill him on the spot to clarify everything? Why does Big Brother say the situation is difficult to handle? Qian Daliu slowly shook his head, clearly analyzing the pros and cons. Killing Squard at this moment would only fuel rumors. In the eyes of outsiders, they would only think that Whitebeard was enraged because his conspiracy was exposed. His image of loving all his adopted sons would instantly collapse, and the pirate army, already suppressed by the pacifista, would see their morale completely disintegrate and collapse. Demon subduing Duluo hesitated, stepped forward, and suggested, "Then don't kill him for now, why not lock Squard up and interrogate him?" As soon as these words fell, the other elders in the hall glanced at him in unison, their eyes filled with a subtle expression. "He stabbed you, and you do nothing. What's the use of locking him up?" Seeing this, Demon subduing Duluo realized he had asked a stupid question, silently withdrew his words, and said nothing more. Qian Daliu's lips curled into an intrigued arc. "Let's see how Whitebeard handles it. I believe this overlord of the sea won't be that simple." Beside him, Light Feather Duluo nodded slightly, then voiced the doubt in his heart. "It's just that Squard looks simple-minded. How could he come up with such a meticulous conspiracy and suddenly turn traitor out of nowhere?" Gold Crocodile Duluo sneered. "There must be a venomous scheme of sowing discord set up by the Navy behind the scenes. Just now on the sky canopy, Fleet Admiral Sengoku and the three admirals witnessed the assassination without the slightest surprise. It's clear they knew the whole plan long ago." The other elders realized this upon hearing it, instantly figuring out the entire calculation behind this mutiny. The screen suddenly switched, no longer lingering on the deck of the Moby Dick, but cutting straight into a fragment of Squard's past memories. Amidst the broken walls and ruins, Squard gripped his sword tightly at his waist, his body trembling uncontrollably. He stared at the person in front of him with disbelief, growling sternly, "Stop talking nonsense. How could Ace be Roger's son?" The camera slowly panned up, revealing a man in a Crimson Admiral's uniform. It was Akainu. Akainu crossed his arms over his chest, his face cold and hard with no ripples, and he threw out his words indifferently. "The outcome of this Marineford war has already been decided by the higher-ups." Squard's heart surged with anger, refusing to believe it, and he retorted angrily, "You think I'll believe such a lie you've made up?" Akainu's lips curled into a cold, mocking smirk. "No matter how you resist, the facts will not change. You peripheral subordinate pirates will only end up throwing your lives away for nothing. Shut up, I will never listen to your provocation." Squard, consumed by rage, drew his sword and charged straight at Akainu. But the gap in strength between the two was vast. In an instant, a loud explosion erupted, and Squard was instantly sent flying by a magma attack, crashing heavily into the rubble and ruins, looking utterly disheveled. Akainu walked forward slowly, looking down at the fallen Squard from above, his tone full of impatience, every word piercing through the other's inner conflict. "Still don't understand. There's still time. If you think I'm lying, just watch carefully. The concentrated attack that is about to begin. Only you subordinate pirates will be harmed. The Navy will never attack the Whitebeard pirates. So that's how it is. It was Akainu's scheme to sow discord. The Navy is so despicable. They would actually use such a scheme. It really is Akainu, a good dog. Disgusting. If you can't beat Whitebeard, you resort to schemes. But is this Squard an idiot? He actually fell for this. Doesn't he think about why Akainu would go to the trouble of telling him this? He could clearly kill him in one hit. There's no help for it. The Navy chose the right target. This Squard not only has a blood feud with Roger, but he's also simple-minded. He looks like someone who is easily tricked. Does such a scheme live up to the name of justice? Too naive. For the Navy, being able to eliminate pirates is justice. This Squard doesn't deserve to be a son. Chapter 88 Tang San. I must remain pure and untainted. The sky canopy continued to play. The image froze on the battered deck of the Moby Dick, with blood dripping continuously from the long blade that had pierced through Whitebeard. Squard's eyes were red, his voice hoarse with grief and indignation. "We risked our lives, for Ace, for you, Pops, to rush into this hell." He raised his hand and pointed to the battlefield below, where countless pirates were fleeing in panic under the dense laser fire of the pacifista, suffering countless casualties. "Open your eyes and look. The Navy's artillery fire, those steel monsters, they have been targeting us, the affiliated pirate crews, from the very beginning. We are being surrounded and slaughtered by pacifista from the rear, and the seas on both sides are frozen into walls of ice. We have long had nowhere to retreat." Hearing these words, the pirates fighting bitterly below felt their already wavering faith shatter completely. Sounds of doubt rose one after another, echoing across the icy battlefield. "Pops, is what he said true? Please, tell us that all of this is a lie. Those weapons really seem to only be hunting down our outer fleets. Could it be that you really intend to sacrifice all of our lives just to save Ace? No way, these pirates actually believed it. It's normal, they've already been broken by the pacifista. Furthermore, the Navy really is only suppressing their affiliated pirate crews. How is Whitebeard going to resolve this? Squard loosened his grip on the sword and bared his chest openly, looking as if he were waiting to be executed. Being able to land this strike is already a stroke of immense luck. I have long been prepared to die, go ahead and kill me, Whitebeard. At the same time, the camera briefly cut to the Sabayati archipelago, where countless citizens were gathered in front of N.A.N Mushi, discussing heatedly, their hearts filled with uncertainty. Did Whitebeard really betray the companions who followed him? Could this be a lie fabricated by the Navy? Then, will those pirates who believed in and followed Whitebeard be completely wiped out by the Navy because of Whitebeard's betrayal? On the deck, Marco could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He rushed forward in a few steps, grabbed Squard by the collar, and berated him angrily, "You idiot! You've been played by the Navy, why won't you believe in Pops?" Squard's eyes widened in anger, "Are you hiding it too? Marco, you are the 1st Division commander, it's impossible for you not to know about the deal between the Navy and Pops." During the standoff, Whitebeard, who had been silent for a long time while clutching his chest wound, spoke slowly. His voice was heavy and clear, reaching everyone's ears. "Ace is Roger's son, that is true. The Navy precisely chose you, the one who harbors the deepest hatred and is the easiest to incite. They won this scheme of estrangement beautifully." Crocodile, watching from the side, was so angry that veins were bulging all over his body. He pointed his golden hook directly at Whitebeard, full of disdain. "To be easily stabbed by your own trusted subordinate, how pathetic. Whitebeard, I don't want to lose to a cowardly man like you." Ha 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 ha, Crocodile is actually anxious. He wants to defeat Whitebeard to prove himself. He definitely doesn't want Whitebeard to have such a stain on him. That's exactly right, he must want to defeat a mythical Whitebeard, not an old, weak, sick Whitebeard. Marco looked at his Pop's swaying body and suddenly realized the key. That's right. If it were Pops in his prime, even a sneak attack by a trusted subordinate would never have succeeded. The root of the problem is that his body has long since decayed, plagued by injuries, and his reflexes are not what they used to be. Whitebeard slowly straightened his towering body and looked down at the hate-filled Squard. "You know what you've done, right, Squard? To actually turn your blade against your own Pops. You really are a foolish son." As his words fell, ignoring the sharp pain in his chest, he reached out with his broad arms and pulled Squard tightly into his embrace. "Even if you are a foolish son, I still love you." The warm, heavy embrace enveloped Squard. He trembled all over, struggling while choking back sobs. "You clearly intended to sacrifice us. Who exactly led your heart of pure loyalty toward hatred and darkness?" Squard answered brokenly. "It was the Navy's insurgent." The sky canopy image jumped again, inserting a flashback of Squard being seduced by Akainu. The Whitebeard legend speaks of is not at all what you imagine. He only cares about protecting his core fleet, has secretly made a deal with the Navy, and betrayed the companions who followed him. All the legends are just fake facades. The person who should truly be punished in this war is Whitebeard. If you trust me, then assassinate Whitebeard and save all the pirate crews under your command." The scene pulled back to reality. Whitebeard gently pushed Squard away from his embrace, his eyes full of pain and regret. "Akainu promised you that as long as you assassinated me, the affiliated fleets would be saved, is that right? I am aware of the monstrous hatred for Raja that has been buried deep in your heart for many years. But, a father's debt, paid by the son, what a ridiculous idea. What has Ace done to you? You and Ace have shared joys and sorrows, capable of overcoming any difficulty. It doesn't matter whose child Ace is. On this vast ocean, we met, not just you, everyone is my son. It's not just Ace who is special. You are all my family." With a clatter, the long blade in Squard's hand fell weakly onto the cold deck. Tears, like broken beads, rolled down his cheeks continuously. Beneath the sky canopy, the Duluo continent fell silent. As expected of Whitebeard, to be able to forgive even after this. He truly loves his sons. That's right, what son doesn't make mistakes? Such a broad heart, worthy of being one of the 4 emperors. Squard must be full of regret. He stabbed the Pops who loved him. Who told him to be so stupid? In contrast to Whitebeard, Akainu really is despicable. I can only say that while this tactic is highly effective, it's truly disgusting. No wonder the Navy wanted to cut the broadcast. For sure, if they didn't cut it, everyone on the pirate continent would know about the Navy's unscrupulous methods. On what grounds could they still talk about justice? Clear Sky Sect. Tang San watched Whitebeard on the sky canopy. That overlord of the sea was clearly severely wounded, yet he did not vent his anger on his foster son who had betrayed him. His heart was filled only with tolerance and affection. That undisguised fatherly love almost rushed out through the sky canopy. Recalling himself, an unspeakable sense of disparity subconsciously arose in his heart. He couldn't help but mutter to himself, if I could acknowledge Whitebeard as a godfather, that seems like it would be pretty good. The moment the thought popped up, Tang San quickly shook his head violently, forcibly suppressing this idea, and secretly warned himself in his heart. No, no, he is a pirate, how could I acknowledge a thief as my father? If I am to become a god in the future, I must remain pure and untainted, without a single stain. Tomorrow. Starting from tomorrow, the Pirate Marineford War will only focus on the battles. Chapter 89 DTN. Whitebeard's physical body is stronger than mine. The sky canopy continued to play. Seeing the child in his arms come to his senses, Whitebeard slowly loosened his arms, straightened his scarred body, and lifted his eyes to gaze at the execution platform high above, looking at Sengoku. His voice, like a tolling bell, resounded across the entire bay. You really haven't lost your touch. Sengoku, I've been played like a fiddle by you. Saying that I intended to sell out my son's heads. Before his words faded, Whitebeard crouched down halfway and slammed both fists heavily into the air. Fine, pitch-black spatial cracks spread out of thin air, and the terrifying power of the tremor erupted. The giant iceberg standing on both sides of the battlefield collapsed and crumbled in response. Sengoku, on the execution platform, saw through his intention at a glance. He is trying to blast a retreat path for his pirates. He truly is a difficult man to deal with. Whitebeard stood up straight, his voice echoing across the entire field, pacifying all the wavering pirates. As pirates, what you should believe in is for you to decide yourselves. After doing all this, Squirt's legs went weak, and he fell to his knees. His right hand trembled uncontrollably, and he buried his head in tears, his heart filled with endless guilt. The rest of the pirates now fully understood the Navy's scheme of sowing discord. The previous suspicions were swept away, and they all wore expressions of shame. So it was a trap set by the Navy. Pops never thought about abandoning us. Damn it, the Navy actually used such a tactic to provoke us. I'm sorry, Pops, I shouldn't have doubted you. After pacifying the broken and weeping Squid, Whitebeard pressed one hand tightly against the wound piercing his chest. Hot blood kept gushing out from between his fingers, and sweat the size of beans kept sliding down his rugged, deeply lined cheeks. He turned his head to look at Crocodile, who was not far away mocking him coldly. His silent inner thoughts, transmitted through the sky canopy, rang out clearly in every corner of the Duluo continent. Crocodile brat, calling me a coward. Give me a break. I am just a mortal with only one heart. No matter if I am called a demon or a monster, it is impossible to be the strongest forever. As long as I can carry a young life into the future, my mission is just about complete. Suppressing all the emotions in his heart, Whitebeard took a deep breath of air filled with the smell of gunpowder and blood. He gripped his Murakumogiri tightly, and his thunderous roar swept across the entire Marineford battlefield. Those who want to come with me, throw away your lives and follow me. Whitebeard is finally going to enter the fray. But can he really do it? He's already this weak, old and frail to begin with, and he was backstabbed by Squid. He's breaking out in a cold sweat just from one full power blow. Yeah, even he himself said he's just a mortal. Wait, really? He said he's a mortal, and you all believe him? A mortal at the Four Emperors level, right? A mortal at level 99, right? And who doesn't only have one heart? Is there anyone who has 3 hearts? Whitebeard doesn't intend to survive this battle. What do you mean? His inner thoughts, he wants to trade his own life for the next generation of the Whitebeard pirates. And Ace might be that next generation. That's true, after all, he has the bloodline of the Pirate King and is the natural successor to the Whitebeard pirates. The sky canopy continued to play. Whitebeard endured the excruciating pain from the piercing wound in his chest and leapt forward violently. The loud boom shook the Moby Dick violently, and in an instant, he landed from the deck onto the icy battlefield below. Sengoku, on the execution platform, saw this and his expression changed drastically. He sternly warned the entire army, everyone, be on guard. The strongest man in the world is charging over. The eyes of the entire battlefield were focused on that tall, blood-stained figure. Every time Whitebeard threw a punch, a harsh tearing sound rang out in the void realm, and one after another, the Navy artillery batteries along the coast exploded in response, with fragments scattering everywhere. Just then, a giant vice admiral with a figure as towering as a mountain rushed out, wielding a giant greatsword. Merely by swinging it wildly, he kicked up a large-scale shockwave, injuring the surrounding pirates one after another. The giant gathered all his strength and delivered a heavy slash, aiming straight for Whitebeard's head. Facing the powerful slash, Whitebeard merely held up his Murakumogiri and blocked it casually. A harsh metallic clashing sound rang out, and the giant's greatsword could not move even an inch further down. "You're in the way." Whitebeard exerted a little force in his arm, directly flipping the giant vice-admiral, along with his sword, heavily to the ground. He tossed his long blade into the air and grabbed the surrounding void realm with both hands from a distance, tearing downwards fiercely. A scene that left the Duluo continent speechless appeared. The area where the giant vice-admiral was located began to spin wildly, and the power of the tremor spread outward. The entire Marineford battlefield began to shake violently. The camera zoomed out, and the sea surface, ice plains, and land all tilted and twisted, as if it were an endless inclined ladder. The space between heaven and earth was forcefully torn open with countless pitch-black cracks. The thick ice surface underfoot broke open, revealing huge, bottomless gaps, and a 100-meter-high violent tsunami rose from the sea, crashing down fiercely toward the Navy position. When the tremors and the tsunami gradually subsided, looking around, everything was devastated. All the Navy buildings had collapsed and were destroyed, like a doomsday scene. Is this really something a mortal can do? The ocean tilted over. Is this the power of the four emperors? I suspect that when Whitebeard was young, he could destroy the world. The upper and lower limits of Paramesha types are just too outrageous. As expected of the strongest man in the world. I'm afraid the Navy only dared to start a war when Whitebeard was old. If he were in his prime, and he unleashed such a blow casually, who could resist? Stardo Great Forest. On the shore of the core lake, a group of vicious beasts all stopped in their tracks, their eyes locked firmly on that blow in the sky canopy where Whitebeard tore apart heaven and earth and stirred up a tsunami. DTN's golden vertical pupils shrank, and he couldn't help but exclaim in shock, "Too strong. This power of the tremor completely exceeds my expectations." Wan Yao Wang's main body was rooted in the earth. As a plant-type spirit beast, he was most sensitive to the vibrations of the earth. His branches and leaves couldn't stop trembling, and he was full of disbelief. That tremor just now, the entire Earth's rock layers were shaking and vibrating, and even the crust was affected. Is this level of destructive power really a force that a physical body can unleash? The arrogant Xiangjun nearby also put away his usual haughtiness, knowing clearly in his heart that his proud sky-ripping claw was not worth mentioning in the face of this level of power. After a long silence, he asked in a muffled voice, possessing the ability to change heaven and earth, why has this person not entered the divine rank realm? DTN spoke slowly, his tone grave. This power of the tremor of his reminds me of the Mountain Dragon King among the 9 great dragon kings. The Mountain Dragon King can collapse mountains and split the earth, relying on the unique, massive body and innate divine force of the ancient dragon clan. But this mortal named Whitebeard can do it with just his special spirit and a physical body that crushes everything. By comparison, the physical body that we spirit beasts have always been proud of seems vulnerable. As these words fell, the surrounding vicious beasts were in an uproar. Chapter 90 Qian Runshui. Even a divinity probably couldn't break the enclosing wall. A strong physical body was originally the greatest reliance of spirit beasts. They could never accept that the physique of a mere human could actually suppress a vicious beast. Even if Whitebeard carried a trace of giant bloodline, it shouldn't be strong to this extent. DTN continued to analyze, pointing out the key. While this power of vibration destroys all things outward, the powerful backlash must also feed back into himself. This is also the reason for his many hidden injuries and failing body. To withstand such terrifying aftershocks relying solely on his pure physical body, this level of bodily strength is truly inconceivable. The vicious beasts pondered carefully, and the more they thought, the more shocked they became. A deep sense of dread arose in their hearts. There actually existed a human in the world whose physical body and power both reached such a level. After a long silence, Xiangjun looked at the figure standing in the ruins on the sky canopy, facing the 3 admirals directly, and said in a muffled voice, "The world's strongest man truly lives up to his name." ... The sky canopy continued to play. The giant vice-admiral struggled to climb up from the ground, gritted his teeth, gripped his giant sword, and charged again, roaring loudly, "The world's strongest power is indeed formidable, but I, bearing justice, will never admit defeat like this." Whitebeard's expression was indifferent. He completely ignored the other party's declaration, leapt high into the air, and smashed down with a punch containing the full power of the tremor fruit. The giant vice-admiral instantly lost consciousness. The shockwave of the punch did not cease, pushing forward all the way, turning the barriers and gun emplacements along the way into ruins. All the pirates below were filled with fanatic excitement in their eyes, shouting loudly. "We are about to rush to the execution platform. Destroy the execution platform and save Ace." The terrifying shockwave shattered the thick outer walls of Marineford all the way, and dust filled the sky. But after the dust slowly dissipated, the towering execution platform still stood intact, with the 3 admirals Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu standing side by side, firmly blocking the path between Whitebeard and the high platform. "It seems this navy is truly formidable." Yeah, that giant vice admiral already faced this terrifying blow head-on and was still able to get back up. If it were me, I'd probably already be playing dead. Playing dead, I'm afraid you brat would have already surrendered. But I didn't expect Whitebeard's attack to not only have area of effect damage but also single target damage. It's equally formidable. One punch was about to destroy the entire battlefield. If it weren't for the three admirals, the execution platform would have been destroyed. How is that possible? Sengoku the marshal is still there. What if this marshal is only peerless in strategy, but not strong in martial prowess? How is that possible? Being able to suppress three admirals, how could his martial prowess not be formidable? That's true, but what about the Heaven-Do royal family? Their spirit is even a swan. That's a special case. We should look at Star Luo. Their emperor is very formidable. The sky canopy continued to play. The pirates were staring at the admirals blocking Whitebeard, and before they could reorganize their offensive, a circle of barriers as thick as mountains slowly rose up. Except for the small area where Little Oars Jr. fell, all other pirates on the entire battlefield were trapped within this wall of bronze and iron. Sword slashes, cannon fire, and spirit abilities took turns hitting the surface of the barrier, but they couldn't even leave a trace. The barrier remained completely unmoved. Sengoku on the execution platform watched this scene and whispered in frustration, "Damn that Little Oars Jr." He quickly turned his head to look at Akainu, his tone resolute, "There is no other way. Do it, Akainu." Akainu stepped out from the formation of the three admirals slowly. The flesh on his arms churned, transforming into churning, scalding crimson magma. The scorching heat seemed to rush towards them even through the sky canopy. Meteor volcano. Akainu's fists kept punching upwards, breaking through the clouds until everything was invisible. The scene was calm yet terrifying. The pirates within the encirclement looked up blankly, staring vacantly at the gray sky, not yet realizing that danger was imminent. The next moment, only extreme fear remained on everyone's faces. Above the clouds, countless huge magma fists fell with a roar, covering the entire encirclement like a blanket. Pirates, damaged warships, and the frozen giant icebergs, wherever the magma struck, they instantly burned and melted, turning into charred ashes. Even the division commanders under Whitebeard, exerting their full power to block with their abilities, could not stop the large-scale deluge of molten lava. In desperation, a large number of pirates jumped into the icy seawater, trying to escape the magma falling from the sky, but it was to no avail. The continuously falling magma kept scorching the sea surface, and the entire coastal seawater was burned until it was boiling hot. Those who jumped into the sea had nowhere to hide. The pirates who were lucky enough to survive the sea of magma fire and struggled to crawl back onto the ice were already exhausted. Before they could catch their breath, the heavy cannons of the enclosing wall and a large number of pacifista had already closed in, firing streaks of scorching lasers from their palms one after another, harvesting the pirates who had lost the power to resist one by one. Screams filled the air within the encirclement. With the sea of fire and lasers intertwined, the pirate side completely fell into a one-sided slaughter. Watching his pirates in the encirclement falling one after another under the magma and lasers, Whitebeard's eyes were wide with rage, and he could no longer sit idly by. He strode forward, clenched his fist, and smashed it heavily against the barrier with full force. The surging, matchless tremor power exploded, causing the entire world to suddenly shift in light and shadow. All things seemed to lose their color. The thick enclosing wall trembled violently, and all the Navy soldiers behind the barrier were blown away by the shockwave. When the violent shaking slowly dissipated, everyone looked closely and saw that there was only a deeply sunken pit on the hard barrier. This cage remained intact, failing to tear open even half a gap for a breakout. Holy crap, how ruthless! This is to wipe out all the pirates. Not just that, this Akainu's magma is like a natural disaster. A real volcanic eruption would be no more than this. Monsters. The Logia types are all monsters. With such an ability, who can survive? And that enclosing wall, what is it made of? Whitebeard's world-destroying punch couldn't even break it. Heaven-Do Empire, Heaven-Do City. The civil and military officials were lined up on both sides, their gazes all firmly nailed to the sky canopy floating in midair, the purgatory-like battlefield of Marineford clearly reflected in everyone's eyes. Marshal Zhe Long stared fixedly at Akainu, who was continuously pouring out torrents of lava on the sky canopy, his eyes filled with burning heat, and he couldn't help but exclaim in admiration, "The magma fruit is simply a perfect ability. Even the power wielded by a divinity probably wouldn't be any better than this." Emperor Shui sat on the dragon throne, nodding slowly, with deep covetousness hidden in his eyes. "That is correct. If this ability could belong to our Heaven-Do Empire, in the future, whether it is a war between the two empires or confronting Spirit Hall, there would be no force under heaven that could contend with us." The greed in Jay Long's heart grew stronger. He looked at the pacifista continuously harvesting pirates and the roaring artillery on the coast, his breathing quickening slightly, and those pacifista, and the giant artillery blocking the entire bay. They are all supreme treasures that could allow our Heaven-Do to stand at the pinnacle of the continent. Emperor Shui narrowed his eyes slightly, expressing deep agreement, already beginning to calculate in his mind how to expand his country's army if he could master these creations. Beside him, Qian Runshui nodded gently, her gaze falling on the indestructible enclosing wall, and she pointed out the most daunting thing about it. The most terrifying thing is actually this enclosing wall. Whitebeard's full force blow, which is close to that of a divinity, only managed to create a dent on the wall surface and couldn't penetrate it at all. I even doubt whether there is any single power in this world that could destroy it alone. She judged inwardly that even if a divinity descended in person, it would take a great deal of effort to completely shatter this barrier. After a long while, Emperor Shuiyi let out a long sigh, his tone full of envy. The pirate continent really has many good things. Chapter 91 Lu Gao. Let's call it a spirit guidance gun. Gangqin City, Blacksmith Association. Inside the wide forging hall, all blacksmiths look up at the sky canopy hanging in midair. The guns, cannons, and indestructible giant siege walls of the Marineford battlefield come into view. Lu Gao grips his forging hammer tightly, his old eyes filled with extreme fanaticism, muttering to himself. This is forging, this is the true Tao of forging. His eldest disciple, Long, steps closer, unable to hide his excitement, and asks quickly, "Teacher, can our blacksmith association find a way to replicate these weapons and barriers?" Lu Gao's tone is extremely firm. "We are all mortals, why wouldn't we be able to replicate them? I have already seen through the general operating principles of the muskets and cannons in the sky canopy." Long's eyes light up suddenly, pleasantly surprised. "Teacher, you understood the roots after just a few glances." Lu Gao raises his hand, breaking down the structure clearly. The principle of a gun is simple. Inside a sealed chamber, energy explodes violently in an instant, creating a strong forward thrust that pushes the bullet out at high speed along a straight barrel. The barrel needs to be forged thick and sturdy to withstand the explosive impact, and the inner wall must be polished repeatedly until smooth to reduce bullet friction so that the range and power can be maximized. As for the cannons, they are nothing more than giant muskets magnified several times. The principle is identical. Long lowers his head to think carefully, finding the logic completely sound, but then new doubts arise. "But teacher, what exactly is the power that drives the bullet's explosion? There is no flow of spirit power throughout the process. Could it be a power exclusive to the pirate continent, like hockey?" Lu Gao immediately frowns, directly denying the conjecture. Absolutely impossible. The sky canopy has already explained that hockey requires special cultivation and is by no means obtainable by everyone. Yet, the foot soldiers on the battlefield each have a musket. Since it is mass-produced, it cannot rely on hockey. In my judgment, it is some kind of naturally existing substance that is stable and peaceful under normal conditions, but once stimulated, it can instantly release a massive explosive force. Long's face sinks, saying dejectedly, "If it is a special substance unique to the pirate continent, wouldn't we have no way to replicate it?" What a rigid mind. Lu Gao knocks on his disciple's forehead and points out, "If we can't find that substance, we can completely use spirit power to replace the explosive power. By storing spirit power and releasing it instantly to propel the projectile, we can achieve the same effect. Let's call it a spirit guidance gun." Long suddenly sees the light, the gloom in his heart swept away. Seeing Lu Gao's brows still tightly locked, he asks suspiciously, "Teacher, is there anything else you haven't figured out?" Lu Gao's gaze falls back to the siege wall on the sky canopy that withstood Whitebeard's full force blow, pondering in a deep voice. "I have been pondering the material of this siege wall. It is truly strange that it can withstand a bombardment of near divine level, yet can be disassembled and enclosed. Could it be a special alloy material unique to the pirate continent?" Lu Gao nods slowly. "That is possible. And behind it, there must be a complete system we have never come into contact with, which can mass-produce this super-strong material and split or splice it into a giant barrier at will." Long nods in agreement, joking half-heartedly. "I thought you were thinking about those pacifists the whole time, teacher." Lu Gao glares fiercely at his disciple, his tone realistic. "Those puppets have precise structures, and their combat power is comparable to a titled Duluo. Their technical level far exceeds our current standard. It is a waste of effort to ponder them now. It is better to devote ourselves to researching guns, cannons, and barriers." The sky canopy continues to play. Akainu stands before the sea of fire, a cold, ferocious grin curling on his lava-covered face. "It is time to put a complete end to this." As the words fall, he strikes the sky continuously with both arms, and a sky full of magma shells emerges again, far denser than the previous meteor volcano. This time, the target of the magma shells is no longer the pirates struggling on the ice, but all the pirate ships docked in the near sea. The top priority is the Moby Dick, the main ship of the Whitebeard pirates. Dozens of scorching magma shells smash onto the hull, and the sturdy ship is instantly ignited by the lava. Soaring flames sweep across the entire giant ship, billowing black smoke rising straight into the clouds. The Jolly Roger, symbolizing Whitebeard's base, is charred and curled in the flames, tottering. Looking at the burning Moby Dick, Akainu laughs coldly, his voice piercing through the sky full of firelight to reach Whitebeard's ears. Whitebeard, the era that belongs to you ends here. Hearing this, Whitebeard slowly turns his head, his gaze locked tightly on the old ship burning with raging flames. Watching the tattered, fluttering Jolly Roger, he seems to hear the old ship sobbing silently in his heart. His face, full of wind and frost, turns gloomy to the extreme, his eyes churning with heartbreak and anger. He whispers softly, full of guilt, "I'm sorry, old friend." Just as everyone's minds are shaken, Sengoku on the execution platform suddenly steps forward, his thick voice spreading throughout Marineford. "The encirclement operation has been completed with perfection. Execute the sentence immediately. Execute Porcas D. Ace." As soon as these words come out, all the pirates in the encirclement are shocked, and horror and despair instantly sweep through the crowd. Luffy struggles to stand up from the ground, his eyes blood red, roaring heart-wrenchingly, "Ace." He runs desperately towards the only gap smashed open by the body of Little Oars Jr. Seeing his desperate appearance, the morale of the other pirates, which was on the verge of collapse, is suddenly reignited. They grip their weapons one after another and follow closely, charging towards that only remaining path of survival. They really want to kill them all. There's no way, the Whitebeard pirates have already entered the coffin prepared for them by the Navy. Even their retreat has been destroyed by Akainu. More than just a retreat. It's their home. Pirates eat, drink, and sleep on their pirate ships. Akainu doing this is no different from burning their home. So that's it, no wonder Whitebeard's face looked so ugly. But Luffy is really constantly boosting morale. The morale of the Whitebeard pirates was already like that, and he was still able to bring it back. Is this a good thing? There's only one gap, the Navy must be guarding only this place. They must have set up a net, going there is just suicide. Then wouldn't Luffy leading people forward so recklessly be playing right into the Navy's hands? The total annihilation has been triggered. But this is the only way left, to pave a path with human lives. Yes, unless there is another Little Oars Jr. The sky canopy continues to play. All the Navy's artillery fire locks onto the gap smashed open by Little Oars Jr. The continuous roaring shakes the ice field. With every round of bombardment, pirates fall, blood stains the sea, and the scene is suffocatingly tragic. On the execution platform, the blade presses tightly against Ace's neck. He watches his companions being swallowed by artillery fire below, his heart wrenching with pain. He closes his eyes in agony, his body struggling in vain. Luffy rushes forward with all his might, but is blasted back again and again by the dense artillery fire. Finally, he is hit hard by a shell and falls into the sea. His figure sinks into the water, his life or death uncertain. Chapter 92, Are Kizaru and Aokiji slacking off? Just as everyone believed the pirates were finished, that massive body suddenly stirred. Little Oars Jr. braced his broken body and slowly stood up, his heavy frame causing the entire ground to shake violently. "Ace, I will definitely bring you back." Enduring his countless wounds, he struggled to reach out his giant hand toward the execution platform. On the sea, Jinbei dove in just in time to save the unconscious Luffy and brought him back to the shore, where Luffy lay on the ice, gasping for air. Holy crap, Little Oars Jr. is actually alive. What incredible vitality, to suffer such attacks and still be standing. But what good does that do? He's just a sitting duck in that gap. I still don't see where Whitebeard's breakthrough point is. The sky canopy continued to play. Sengoku, with a cold and stern expression, issued the order, "Do not cease fire. Keep shooting." The Marines raised their rifles in unison, and a hail of bullets poured furiously onto Little Oars Jr. The giant's body was riddled with holes, his form swaying precariously as he knelt heavily to the ground, barely managing to hold himself up. Kizaru watched the scene with cold eyes, his tone carrying a hint of mockery. That vitality is truly astonishing. Before he finished speaking, he raised his right index finger, and dazzling golden light gathered at the tip. What would happen if this beam pierced your head? The blinding laser locked onto Little Oars Jr.'s head. The pirates were frantic, roaring the giant's name. At the critical moment, a loud shout suddenly tore through the silence, "Sea current shoulder throw." Surging seawater shot into the sky, crossing directly over the impregnable siege wall and crashing down in front of the three admirals. As the water receded, Luffy lay half-prone, clutching a thick wooden mast, panting heavily, his eyes fixed stubbornly and fiercely on the three admirals ahead. So cool, in this shot, Luffy is actually quite charming when he's serious. Superficial, jumping straight into the faces of the three admirals, how is that any different from seeking death? But Luffy finally made it here. I feel like he's been running forever. But what's the point? This kind of battlefield is still too early for him. The sky canopy continued to play. Aokiji spoke calmly. "You finally made it here." Akainu's magma surged, his eyes icy and piercing. The son of dragon, he is truly fearless. Kizaru still wore his careless, mocking smile. "So young, it's really scary." In the distance, Whitebeard watched the boy's slight yet fearless figure, a faint smile touching his lips as he whispered, "Kid." After a brief silence, Akainu spoke coldly, "Your persistence is commendable." Aokiji stepped forward and continued, "But this battlefield is still too far beyond your reach." Kizaru, who always loved to be sarcastic, put aside his jokes for a moment and said bluntly, "It is impossible for you to defeat the three of us." Luffy felt not a shred of fear. His eyes were locked onto Ace on the high execution platform, and he roared, "Give Ace back to me." With that, he picked up the thick mast in his arms, swung it with all his might, and smashed it fiercely toward the three admirals. Seeing this, Whitebeard chuckled. That reckless temperament is exactly the same as his brother's. He turned to look at the wounded Little Oars Jr. kneeling on the ground and ordered loudly, "Little Oars Jr., hold your ground. We still need your strength to open the path." He then shifted his gaze to Diamond Jozu and commanded in a deep voice, "Jozu, reveal our final trump card." Jozu nodded heavily, turned to the remaining pirates, and roared, "Everyone, charge straight to the plaza." On the other side, in front of the three admirals, Aokiji slowly extended one hand. A biting chill instantly swept over the mass Luffy had thrown, and the thick wooden pole was instantly encased in solid ice. Aokiji gave it a casual push, and the frozen mast, carrying a bone-chilling cold, crashed back toward Luffy. Luffy leapt into the air, kicking his legs in a high-speed series, filling the air with layers of afterimages. Rubber stamp Gatling. The dense barrage of kicks slammed into the ice pillar, and with a boom, the entire frozen mast was shattered instantly. The shattered ice fragments, carried by the force of the wind, flew toward the three admirals. Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu simply stood there with their arms crossed, not moving an inch, with no intention of dodging. Everyone thought Luffy's attack had failed completely, but suddenly, crimson steam rose around him. He activated Gear Second, his speed surged instantly, and using the ice fragments as cover, he dashed past the three admirals, heading straight for the execution platform behind them. "No time to fight, you guys." A hint of playful approval flashed in Kizaru's eyes, "Not bad. You've learned to use a little trickery." Holy crap, Luffy actually used his brain. Yeah, he learned to feint. But it's useless, Kizaru is right there, how can he be faster than light? The sky canopy continued to play. A flash of golden light, and Kizaru instantly appeared in front of Luffy, raising his foot to deliver a fierce horizontal kick. The powerful force kicked Luffy directly back in front of the three admirals. At the same moment, Sengoku shouted from the execution platform, "Execute!" The two executioners gripped their blades tightly and brought them down hard toward Ace's neck. Everyone's heart tightened instantly, and Whitebeard roared out, "Ace!" As expected, Kizaru made his move. Is it just me? Why do I feel like both Kizaru and Aokiji are holding back? How could that be? Can't you tell? Their attack power is so weak. If Akainu had made that move just now, Luffy would definitely be dead. That's true. Why is that? It's really about to happen. Is this how it ends for Ace? How is he supposed to be saved? Luffy got kicked back, and Whitebeard and the others are still inside the siege wall. What about Haki? Conqueror's Haki. Whitebeard must have it, right? Like I said, he's old and frail. Holy crap, that's so ruthless. The sky canopy continued to play. Scarlet blood sprayed out, but everyone was shocked to discover that the blood didn't come from Ace, but from the two executioners. Sengoku looked up sharply, his voice booming with fury. Who interfered? Below the execution platform, yellow sand churned into the sky. Crocodile stepped slowly out of the sandstorm, a cold snort escaping his nose. You bastard, you have a grudge against Whitebeard, why are you helping him? Sengoku demanded angrily. In midair, Marco had already spread his wings and was diving down, but seeing the crisis averted, he landed on a nearby metal frame and muttered to himself, "Looks like it's not my turn to act just yet." Sand flowed over Crocodile's fingertips, and he said with an arrogant tone, "I'll deal with that dying old man myself later. Until then, I don't want to see your smug faces." Before he could finish, a sharp, cold light suddenly struck, and Crocodile's head flew into the air along with the flying sand. Doflamingo stepped onto the edge of the platform, walking on his strings, a flamboyant and mocking smile on his lips. "Crocodile, you bastard, are you siding with Whitebeard?" With a swirl of a sandstorm, Crocodile's severed head was lifted back into place by the sand, and his body instantly restored. He swung his sharp golden hook backward, striking fiercely behind him. Doflamingo had anticipated this and stomped his foot down hard, accurately blocking the incoming golden hook. The moment the two forces collided, a terrifying shockwave exploded, sending the surrounding marines flying. The two quickly separated using the force, standing at a distance and confronting each other. War was on the brink of breaking out. Chapter 93, Clear Sky Sect Elder, the six powers are invincible. What trash is Ghost Shadow perplexing track? It's actually Crocodile. I never expected him to make a move. Why, there's no reason for him to do that. He said he didn't want to see the Navy so happy. That's all bull. He just doesn't want this war to stop. He wants to drain Whitebeard's stamina more so he can wipe him out in one go. This Crocodile is really going all out. Sengoku must be furious. They were halfway to victory. Doflamingo is here too. Those two are really tangled up with each other. I'm curious, what would the Navy do if Crocodile didn't intervene? Isn't Marco almost there? He's clearly here to save someone. How can he save anyone from that far away? Is it possible that Marco knows hockey? The sky canopy continues to play. Luffy regains his footing and charges desperately toward the execution platform again, but a Navy figure suddenly blocks his path halfway. Stop right there, Straw Hat. I will never let you take another step forward. Luffy has only one thought, to save Ace. He has no time for a confrontation and roars, get out of my way. He throws a punch with all his might at the opponent's face, but the Navy soldier says in a low voice, shave. His figure vanishes instantly, reappearing in midair. He steps lightly on the void and shouts, moonwalk. He walks through the air, circling rapidly behind Luffy. He puts strength into his fist and shouts, iron body smash. His right fist, carrying immense force, slams down. Luffy narrowly dodges to the side, and the fist smashes into the ground, creating deep, dense cracks. Luffy turns to counterattack, his arm stretching and twisting, unleashing a swift strike midair, Gum Gum Bullet. The Navy soldier doesn't dodge or block, tensing his muscles to take the hit head-on, shouting, iron body. However, the power of Luffy's Gear 2 punch far exceeds expectations, slamming hard into the opponent's chest. The Navy soldier's eyes roll back, his body goes limp, and he falls straight to the ground, losing the ability to fight. Clear text appears on the light screen in the sky, fully explaining the strange ability the Navy soldier just used, and everyone on the Duluo continent watches intently. The Navy's 6 powers are a super strong martial art exclusive to elite Navy officers. Relying on extreme physical training to break through human limits, it consists of 6 major techniques, collectively known as the 6 powers. Shave instantly kicks the ground dozens of times at high speed, using the explosive recoil to achieve short-distance teleportation. This is what the Navy soldier called shave. It allows one to vanish from the spot instantly. It is extremely useful for surprise attacks and dodging. Moonwalk continuously kicks the air, relying on the air's reactive force to run and leap through the air. It looks like walking on nothing, allowing one to stay in the air for a long time without being restricted by the ground. Iron body tenses every inch of muscle in the body, making the physical body as hard as refined steel blades. Ordinary punches, kicks, or blade attacks can hardly injure it, allowing one to withstand impacts. The weakness is that one can still be severely injured when taking strong, explosive attacks head-on. Paper art relaxes every muscle in the body, making it as light as thin paper to dodge by flowing with the enemy's attack currents. It can easily evade large range slashes and artillery fire. Tempest swings the legs at high speed to compress the air and launch a vacuum blade, cutting enemies from a distance. It can slice through rocks and steel without even touching them. Finger pistol hardens the finger like a spear, concentrating all physical strength into the fingertip. A single thrust can pierce steel plates and human bodies, possessing extremely high penetrating power. The 6 powers can be cultivated individually or combined in pairs or multiple sets. Those who have mastered all 6 techniques are called 6 powers masters. Their combat power far exceeds that of ordinary Navy soldiers, and it is the core assessment standard for the Navy to select elites. Another set of skills. The learning requirements don't seem high. They are clearly much lower than the difficulty of learning the 3 types of hockey. Of course, the 3 types of hockey are only used by the Shichibukai and some powerful vice admirals or captain-level pirates to this day. But these 6 powers are already being used by several rear admirals. So it only requires pure physical fitness. It seems most people on the pirate continent have absurdly strong physical fitness. Luffy seems very experienced in dealing with this type of enemy. He must have encountered them before. Clear Sky Sect. On the terrace of the main hall of the mist-shrouded Clear Sky Sect, a group of elders stands together, their eyes locked on the 6 powers being explained on the sky canopy. The Grand Elder stares intently at techniques like shave, moonwalk, iron body, and tempest kick on the light screen. A fanatical light ignites in his eyes, and he cannot help but exclaim loudly. This set of martial arts is simply too perfect for our Clear Sky Sect. Explosive power, physical defense, and close quarters combat methods are all here, without a single bit of flashy or useless stuff. Besides, when it comes to the pure foundation of the physical body, who in the whole continent can compare to our Clear Sky Sect disciples? We swing hammers and forge iron for generations, tempering our muscles and bones daily. We are naturally at an advantage in cultivating this set of moves. The elders beside him nod in agreement, their tones full of approval. Big brother is right, I like this kind of head-on fighting style. It's 100 times more pleasing to the eye than those dodging methods. The third elder adds, pointing out the biggest benefit. What's even rarer is that it can make up for the biggest weakness of our Clear Sky sect. Our strong attacks are top tier, but our movement speed is slightly lacking. With the addition of Shave and Moonwalk, it's equivalent to perfectly filling our flaws. It's clearly tailor-made for us. We must not miss the next dungeon. The elders talk over one another, praising the 6 powers, their words subtly revealing a disdain for evasion-style movement techniques. N.A.N, who was standing quietly to the side, feels his expression darken bit by bit upon hearing this. Although the elders didn't name him directly, their words implied they looked down on the sophisticated movement techniques like the ghost shadow perplexing track he learned from the Tang sect, only praising the 6 powers that rely on pure physical brute force. A sense of injustice surges in his heart. N.A.N thinks to himself, the movement technique manual passed down by the Tang sect for thousands of years is subtle and meticulous. How can it be compared to this rough martial art from the One Piece world that only relies on brute force? But as soon as the thought occurs, the images of Moonwalk stepping through the air and Shave instantly teleporting appear before his eyes, and a bit of irrepressible yearning rises in N.A.N's heart. He silently weighs the pros and cons, turning his mind. Although the 6 powers lack sophisticated changes and only focus on brute force, the methods for instantaneous explosive power are indeed unique and can give me a lot of inspiration for cultivation. If I can fully understand and integrate the 6 powers, they could become a powerful aid and make up for my own shortcomings in strong attacks. N.A.N remains calm on the surface while secretly activating his purple demon eye to silently record all the force-exerting details of the 6 powers from the sky canopy, planning to study and deduce them when he has the time. The sky canopy continues to play. Luffy ignores the obstruction ahead and insists on rushing toward the execution platform. That fearless look falls into the eyes of Akainu, only causing him to look gloomy. He takes a slow step forward, magma surging and sizzling on his arms, intending to intervene personally. Before Akainu can move, Aokiji at his side has already dashed out first. He crosses his arms in front of his chest, and biting cold air suddenly condenses. A long, sharp, giant ice blade shoots through the air, piercing straight toward Luffy's left shoulder. Chapter 94 Whitebeard has finally entered. With a crisp, poochie sound, an ice blade ruthlessly pierced his shoulder. The immense impact force knocked Luffy directly to the ground, and blood continuously dripped down along the ice blade. Aokiji walked slowly to stand in front of Luffy, reached out, and yanked the ice blade out of his shoulder. Looking down from above at the boy who was curling up and twitching in pain, his tone was flat, devoid of any pity. Your grandfather did me a favor back in the day, but today, I cannot hold back. The moment you stepped onto this path, this became your destined end. As his voice fell, an ice blade condensed once more in Aokiji's palm, and he raised his hand, intending to strike directly at Luffy's vitals. At the critical moment, a figure wreathed in pale blue flames tore through the sky of the battlefield and sped over. It was the 1st Division Commander, Marco. His wings were ablaze, his speed so fast that only a blurred afterimage remained. His right leg, coated in armament hockey, kicked fiercely toward Aokiji's blade-wielding left hand. With a crack, the unformed ice blade in Aokiji's palm shattered on the spot. The terrifying force followed, slamming heavily into Aokiji's left kidney, sending him flying like a kite with a broken string, crashing heavily into a distant building. That was close. Luffy almost died. Marco arrived just in time. But this Aokiji is too ruthless. To disregard the favor from back then, he could have at least gone a little easy on him. Wait, are you serious? It was clearly Aokiji who came out to stop Akainu from attacking. If Akainu had attacked, it would have been over in one hit. That's right, haven't you noticed? Both Aokiji and Kizaru seem very hesitant when facing Luffy. I'm certain that if Akainu pursues Luffy later, it will definitely be a fight to the death. So, it really comes down to background, huh, Luffy. The sky canopy continued to play. The stalemated battle suddenly took a shocking turn. The entire bay's water suddenly surged wildly for no reason, and giant waves roared up. A massive shadow that blocked out the sky slowly emerged from the depths of the sea. A giant pirate ship, far larger than the Moby Dick, broke through the waves. The ship was surrounded by various pirates who had just fallen into the water and were struggling to swim toward the shore, charging at full speed directly toward the gap opened by Little Oars Jr. Whitebeard looked at the panicked and bewildered navy, a cold smile curling at the corner of his mouth. I never said that all of my ships had arrived. All the navy on the shore hurriedly turned their cannons, pouring out shells regardless of the cost. Dense artillery fire bombarded the giant ship's hull, but the material of the hull was unimaginably hard. The hits only sparked, failing to leave even a deep mark, unable to stop its advance at all. Sengoku on the execution platform instantly saw through Whitebeard's entire plan and roared orders to the entire army, stop bombarding the big ship. Concentrate fire to hold back Little Oars Jr. Hearing this, Whitebeard sneered, too late. Little Oars Jr., heavily injured and kneeling on the ground, turned around abruptly upon hearing this. He wrapped his arms around the colossal ship, and with his own strength alone, forcibly lifted the 1,000-ton ship high up, stepping forward and dragging the giant ship straight out of the cage of the encirclement wall. All the pirates under Whitebeard who were trapped inside the barrier followed the giant ship to break out, and Whitebeard also stood on the bow, charging out of the blockade together. At this moment, the entire encirclement wall that had separated the two sides completely lost its function. The pirate army gathered on the outer side of the plaza, with only an empty plaza separating them from the high execution platform. They were within reach. Garp on the high platform looked at the encirclement charge taking shape below and sighed heavily. We've been played. To actually utilize that rat hole. The Navy's encirclement layout collapsed by more than half in an instant. The deadlocked situation, which had been locked tight, was turned around by Whitebeard single-handedly. The morale of the entire Navy plummeted suddenly, while the pirate camp erupted in earth-shattering cheers. So amazing, this is Whitebeard's secret weapon. It's actually a giant ship. Sengoku's scheme has fallen through. First Little Oars Jr. appeared to open a gap, and then Whitebeard used this gap to get everyone in. Little Oars Jr. really is the key. Both sides have had their wins and losses. What kind of win or loss? It's clearly the Navy that has the slight upper hand. The Whitebeard pirates have lost 9 out of 10. Don't forget, Whitebeard has entered. With that spirit of his, once he makes a move, do ordinary Navy soldiers even matter? The final slaughter is about to begin. The sky canopy continued to play. Whitebeard leapt, landing from the giant pirate ship. There was no gentleness left on his face, his expression was cold and intimidating. My sons, retreat for now and create some distance. Before his voice had even faded, he raised the Murakumogiri high with one hand. The massive, surging power of vibration completely wrapped around the long blade, and he swung it down fiercely toward the plaza ahead. An invisible shockwave spread with a boom. The ground, Navy muskets, artillery stations, and swaths of soldiers were all shaken off the ground and into the air, densely suspended in midair, only to fall heavily like dumplings a moment later, leaving a scene of devastation. In the vast plaza, only the 3 admirals, Aokiji, Kizaru, and Akainu, stood firmly in place, completely unmoved by the shock. Marco, Jozu, and the other division commanders leapt together, all landing by Whitebeard's side. All combat forces were assembled. Whitebeard raised his long blade high, his voice sweeping across the entire field. My children, charge with me, save Ace. The pirate side shouted in unison, their morale greatly boosted. Sengoku, on the execution platform, seeing the encirclement defense line completely collapse and the situation spiraling out of control, rolled up his sleeves with a grave expression and turned to look at the silent Garp beside him. Garp, we can no longer stand by and watch. Garp lowered his eyes, his aura becoming increasingly heavy and oppressive, and he only gave a dull response, So cool. I'm shocked every single time I see Whitebeard's ability. It's truly a power like a natural disaster. With this one slash, all the distance the Navy had managed to create has been erased. No wonder the Navy didn't dare let Whitebeard get so close. Is Sengoku going to enter the fray too? Where does Sengoku get the confidence to make Garp join in too? Yeah, Garp doesn't seem very willing. Nonsense, sending your own grandson to his death, would you be willing? It's just that I don't know who will stop Whitebeard. I feel like there's already an answer to this question. It must be Akainu. That's true, it feels like if Aokiji and Kizaru didn't have the strength of admirals, Akainu could just kill them both directly. The sky canopy continued to play. Whitebeard gripped the Murakumogiri horizontally. The terrifying power of the tremor once again surged and vibrated on the blade, and the void faintly cracked with fine black lines. The Navy soldiers blocking the front trembled all over, looking at that towering figure with terror on their faces, crying out, it's coming again. That power is about to erupt again. Aokiji, on the side, gently exhaled a puff of white mist, his tone carrying a hint of helplessness. There's really no other way. Before his voice had finished, he leapt high, his entire body's extreme cold power pouring out without reservation. Ice ball. Boundless, biting cold swept across the entire plaza instantly. A massive amount of ice converged, layering over Whitebeard's entire body. In just a fleeting moment, Whitebeard was completely encased in thick, solid ice, turning into a giant ice sculpture, unable to move.